I'm Robert Arsov, Director on the Board of Macedonia 2025 and Vice Chairman of the organization. I'm also, by occupation, a banker, investment banker, and I work in New York on Wall Street. Have been doing this about 14 years with Credit Suisse. So I'm actually very excited to be here today with, I think, a great mix of panelists for a panel session which is titled Presenting Financing Investments and Exports from Microfinancing to Financing Capital Investments. And because I think the group of people we have here today will hopefully offer you with a little bit of a perspective of what's available to Macedonian companies today in the current environment in Macedonia, as well as juxtaposing that against what's available to businesses in general in Western Europe, Southeastern Europe, the region, as well as some new initiative we have undertaken as an organization, which I think we announced yesterday with, in collaboration with CEF. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce to you our keynote speaker here today, Bert van der Waart, who is the current executive chairman of CEF. And many of you probably know CEF. They've been present in Macedonia since almost over 10 years now. I'll have Bert say something about that. He's also co-founder of CEF. So since our announcement yesterday, I think I'm very excited that we are going to actually have an interesting collaboration going forward, a more intensive collaboration going forward. So with that, actually, let me introduce quickly just the rest of the panelists, and I'm going to take it over to Bert. The second panelist is Kurt Geiger, who you guys had a chance to meet in some other panels yesterday. He's a current member of the supervisory board of Raiffeisen. As well, he holds a few other positions on various private equity funds that are focused on the region and Southeastern Europe. Third actually panelist is Elena Urumovska, who is the head of the EBRD, in charge of the Skopje office, and or in charge of the Macedonia office, correct? Sorry. And then we have the final panelist is Dragan Martinovski, who is the CEO of the Macedonian Bank of Development and Promotion. Interesting organization, which I'm actually excited for him to clarify a little bit what he does, because he has an interesting group of clients, which is the other banks in Macedonia. Then we have actually one of our partners here today who helped out with the organization of this investment summit from Macedonian Enterprise of Development Foundation, Lazar Nedanovski. Very thankful for all the help you guys gave us to get this summit in a great shape. We also have the pleasure, we have the Ivan Steriev, who is the CEO of the Macedonian Stock Exchange. So he's the only equity guy on the panel, so don't be nice to him. Actually, sorry, Bert is also an equity guy here, so let's not forget Bert. And then we have Filip Kotora, who is the member of the board of directors of the Ohridska Banka, and he's a member, which is the member of the Societe Generale. Okay, so with that, Bert, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here. I was first in Ohrid in 1995. I was there to discuss alternative financing. I was struck by how beautiful it was, how hospitable the people were, and how far away Macedonia, particularly in Ohrid, seems from the rest of the world. I would say that in a positive sense. Today I'm here again. It's just as beautiful. The people are more hospitable, and I'm speaking on alternatives to finance. But I have to say that Macedonia has, of course, had a fantastic run since 1995. I think in terms of sophistication and growth, ambition, and realization, Macedonia is a true standout, I think, in the region. And I think with this conference, we're really looking at a terrific future. I want to say very briefly what CEF has done in the past a little bit. We are actually about 23 years since we were formed. We invest in 28 countries. We have about $740 million under management and have done about 360 risk capital investments. That's about an average of $1.4 million, very small. If you're from the micro world, this is big. If you're from the private equity world, or if you're from Robert's world, this is extremely small. But what we found is that there are great entrepreneurs in many countries that are not on the radar screen of the big players. And I think Macedonia is a great example. When we established the first risk capital fund here, we were backed, and I'm very grateful to see both EBRD, IFC, USAID, and DEG is the only one that was not there. We were backed. It was a small fund, around $12 million. But the companies we invested in, they included Tnex, they included OnNet, Dnevnik, Datapons, Login, Planet Press. These are companies which today are quite important players in Macedonia market. The growth, it was a 25% annual compound annual growth rate in dollar terms versus 5% for the country. 22% increase in employment versus 1% for the country. And 76% of the jobs went to unskilled or semi-skilled people who need to be trained. And once they were trained, they were valuable. And they, on average, the salaries, the wages went up 13% compound annual growth rate in dollar terms. At the height of the fund, 3% of GDP was generated by our portfolio. So you can see a small fund with risk capital. Of course, we were benefited by banks also lending. Of course, we were benefited by lots of other actors in the economy helping. But that risk capital component was critical to unlock that other financing and to empower the entrepreneurs to grow the way that they can grow. I think at the end of the day, one of the most important things that we did were the people that we were able to hire and to work with. Yesterday you saw Vlado Peševski. We're continually indebted to him, and I think his view, as I was listening to how the government was looking at FDI, it was like a private equity guy. He was talking about a funnel, he was talking about negotiations, and out of 1,000, maybe 10, maybe 1, the same kind of issue. But we also have Janko Trankowski, who now is head of the pension fund, Dejan Kalnikov, who was at the head of Slovenska Telekom for a while, Martin Stosic, who's with the government, and Oliver Kostoranov, who heads us and is also here today. I'm very glad Ollie has been a great friend. We're also very happy to have been able to found off some of the reflows SEED. This is the Center for Entrepreneurship and Executive Development. Any risk capital fund can only invest in 14 or so companies. Has to be selective, has to be working with them intensively. But there are a lot of early stage entrepreneurs who need coaching, who need direct access to practical advice and mentoring. And this is something SEED does, and Jovan Majowski, who's here, and with the help of AID, we've, I think, got more than 500 members. And I think when you look at that, more than 500 SMEs who are ambitious and growing and mentored, et cetera, you can see that there is a solid base for investment. So why aren't more people investing in Macedonia, at least on the private equity side? And I think that's, as the impressive government ministers, the panels yesterday were saying, Macedonia, while it's much better known, the world economy is fighting for investment dollars everywhere. And that's true for FDI, and that's true for private equity dollars. Friends from the IFIs, to some extent, Macedonia has been too successful. They're cutting back a little bit their activities here. Certainly also, for them to be efficient, they want larger investment amounts. It's difficult on a $15 million fund to attract people who want to be diversified. They don't want to be more than 10 or 15% of the fund. This is a very small area for an institution to be willing to invest in, as interesting as the opportunities are. And so I think for that reason, really it's important on risk capital to have the private sector step up. If the opportunities are there, as we saw yesterday, it's important that people who understand business and who understand business cycles and how innovation can work, that they step up. And it's that reason why, as you know, Robert, I'm absolutely honored and delighted that Macedonia 2025 is working together with CEF to form this fund. I think there's been some press releases already out there, and I have to say, lots of emails from friends in Skopje. I think it's been a great success. I think people realize that risk capital is needed in Macedonia and focused on Macedonian entrepreneurs. I think there's lots of things we can do about that. I hope we can talk about that a little bit later. But I think with private capital and private initiative leading the way, I think we will see the future of risk capital, and ultimately I'm sure my friend at the stock exchange would agree, without the private money coming into the equity side, we're not going to develop that part of the capital structure which every country needs. So I would want to just wind up my comments, and looking forward to talking more with some of you. Some of you already had the pleasure of meeting. I was in Chennai in India, former Madras, about a week ago, and talking to a guy. We have an agribusiness fund there, talking to a guy who is running one of the largest fruit juice factories, and he was in Macedonia the week before. He said, yes, we thought about Central Europe. Have you heard of Macedonia? I said, I thought this is Chennai. This is not the major part of the world. And there was a delegation that had gone over, and we're very impressed with Macedonia. And I think what they're looking for is to say, okay, how can we see more activity? We see the opportunity, all the factors that were discussed. So I think in terms of globally, we need to understand that Macedonia is not at the far end of Europe, but that Macedonia is in the center of its own region. And I think whether we work with the Caucasus, with India, Northern Africa, Ukraine, as well as our great friends in Western Europe, Macedonia, I think, has an important platform of great entrepreneurs who've become entrepreneurs by necessity, but I think by now are doing it out of love and enthusiasm and the perceived success. So I'm delighted to be here, and I hope to talk more about this with some of you, and that I will continue to be coming back to Ohrid and not just talking about alternative financing, but doing deals. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Bert, and we have plenty of good questions for you, I'm sure, from the audience in a few seconds here. With that, I pass the baton here to Kurt Geiger. Kurt. Yep.
You wanted to ask me questions, or?
I was not going to set you up too much, other than maybe you can talk a little bit about just kind of the overall financing environment in Southeastern Europe. There's another baton there. Okay, perfect. So just talk a little bit about the financing environment in Europe in general, and also Southeastern Europe as a region, because you see it from where you are, and just talk about kind of what you need to do today if you're business anywhere in Europe or in the world, or specifically in Macedonia, to go out and secure financing, either debt or equity.
Well, we all know what the problems are in Europe with the Eurozone in difficulty, because the issues really are, there's a debt crisis, mainly of also many countries, which didn't expect to be in such a situation, a few years ago. And this has really had a very big impact on CEE, because 25 years ago, when the transformation and transition started, there were no banks in any of these countries. And from a point of view, when we were at the EBRD, we were very keen in attracting also strategic investors, because they had the expertise, they had the technology, they had the means, and they had the experience of doing banking. And these banks, in which institutions like the IFC and the EBRD and other donors such as the FMO in Holland and the in Germany, the KfW and the EG institutions, they provided financing for that. The countries developed very well, but the issue was, particularly in Southeast Europe, that the Greek banks, which really knew very well the region and did a very good job in the area, but they were sort of latecomers in the region, so they funded, through their standing in international markets, the expansion in countries like Southeast Europe in particular. And when the crisis then came, and then when Greece was very much affected by that, that meant they could not refinance themselves in the international markets at all, and if they could, they was it very, very expensive for them. And I can tell you, like 2 years ago, the Greek banks paid for individual deposits in countries 3 times as much as the strategic investors like the French and Austrian banks primarily were willing or were paying off, and was at the time a big concern to the regulators there was this huge discrepancy of cost of funding. It just showed the pressure they were under, and they continue to be under that. The other problem also was that the financing was really done to a large extent to SMEs, which was the real issue, in foreign currency. And all of a sudden, when the convergence process stopped, which actually meant that the local currencies were appreciating vis-a-vis the euro, when the crisis really hit, then the local currency started to depreciate again. And that was a lot of pain for a lot of the borrowers, particularly SMEs and individuals. So that is really the situation. The strategic investors have an issue that they had to deleverage, although the banks, the strategic banks operating in the region, are bread and butter banks, and they are not very much engaged in trading, proprietary trading. They don't have a big book in this area, and they didn't really have any big difficulties, except access to money became very expensive for them. They had to increase their equity base 10%, as the EBA has given them as a target, and they have reached that. But the problem is for the banks now, for every loan they make or want to make, they need equity for that. They also have a non-performing loan portfolio, which is more or less in control, in my opinion, but it's really the question of the funding is very difficult, because if you don't get equity, you cannot make the loans, and the international markets have punished the banks in general on the exchanges and on the value. All the banks that operate in the region here and in Europe, their market value is about, on average, 50% of the book value. So it's just incredible, you know, how cheap it is. But also investors don't really want to put their money into the financial sector at the moment. And this caused further for the entrepreneurs that they didn't have money. They lost confidence in the system as a whole. So a lot of businessmen are thinking quite a few times before they are going to make an investment. So banks on one hand are looking for business, and they cannot find good business. And if they find good business, they have the challenge on how to organize the equity to have that. So there are a lot of limited alternative opportunities, except for private equity. And the private equity industry, I think, in CE has developed in a very good way, very much a situation where Macedonia is today, in my opinion, on PE, because it is a very small economy, and those are actually very good transactions to be done. And the equity is there. The big challenge on small funds is, how do you exit? The traditional process in private equity is you identify a target, you make an investment, you try to make it work, but many people try to leverage it by actually acquiring another company and really doing much more leverage buyouts, which in large economies made a lot of sense when you had a very buoyant stock exchange, because that was your exit. But when you invest, when you have a fund of $20 million or 20 million euros, you invest in relatively small companies. And how are you going to exit out of that? And the small entrepreneur, like we have here in Macedonia, he needs equity, because where should he get it from? He has a good idea. He wants to put his sweat money in there, the little one which he has, and he wants to work, and he wants to build a business, and he needs equity for that, and he needs, of course, the debt from the banks. But how can the investor in the fund get his money back out of there? So it's a real challenge in the region, and it's not really very easy. And the exits via stock exchanges are very difficult because they are not very liquid, and the transactions are relatively small. But where private equity has been very successful in the region was mainly where they invested in companies that were in technology, in softwares. Telecoms were really the very big runners in Southeast Europe, in the whole region. And those private equity funds that invested relatively small amounts had significant returns, because the strategics then came back and said, there's enough volume, there are enough customers, there are enough accounts, there are enough telephones, and that's when they bought it. They bought a market share and the access to the market, and they could make something out of that, which the local entrepreneurs actually couldn't do that. But therefore, I think, you know, the setting up of a fund, as you have here, is a great opportunity. And I also think the IFIs have been very active in providing a lot of funding in a way that allows access to medium-sized financings, which can be very difficult, were hardly produced and provided these funds from the market actually at the moment. So maybe this is enough food for a continuing discussion on this.
There's plenty of for some questions as a follow-up here. Yeah. So thank you, Kurt, for the good overview here of the situation of the Southeastern Europe. So with that, Elena, I wanted to give you the speaking role here. So just a little bit, you're head of the EBRD office, and obviously we did mention here that EBRD has been traditionally the largest investor in Macedonia. So it'll be interesting now, as Bert and Kurt have spoken, is to you to give a little bit of a now sense of what is EBRD doing today in Macedonia, and then what is your future plans for committing capital in the country.
Thank you, Robert. Yep. I will focus, as you said, on the EBRD's financing instruments, our operations in the country, and an initiative that we are leading together with the EU to close a financing gap that we have identified on the market. EBRD, as you know, is active in 29 countries from Central Europe to Central Asia, and it is the largest single investor in its region of operation, with more than 75 billion euro invested until now. With the EBRD investment often serves as a catalyst to attract significant foreign direct investments in our countries of operation, and also to mobilize the domestic capital. Although we finance also public infrastructure projects, our primary focus is the private sector, where we promote competitiveness, entrepreneurship, and sound corporate governance. More than 80% of our investments are in the private sector. Variety and innovation of financial instruments is a strength of the bank. I'm sorry, I forgot to move to. Okay, thank you. And we can go on the second one, please. As I said, variety and innovation is our strength, and we basically tailor our financing to the specific needs of the project and the client. We typically fund up to 35% of the total project cost in project finance and for greenfield projects, or up to 35% of the long-term capitalization of the project company for corporate finance. The bank requires equity contribution from the sponsors of a minimum 25 to 30%, depending on the risk profile of the project. Debt, equity, and guarantees are our key financing instruments. Loans can be senior, subordinated, or convertible, short to medium term for working capital financing, or long term for capital investments. Our loans can be denominated in the major foreign currencies, or in some cases in some local currencies. We also arrange syndicated loans in which we are the lender of record. Interest rates can be fixed or floating, and our loans are priced competitively depending on the market rates. The EBRD does not subsidize its projects nor provide soft loans. Equity investments we do as well. That is about 20% of our financing in the private sector and the financial sector is done with equity investments through various type of instruments. But we always take minority stakes while preserving the blocking minority rights for certain key strategic business decisions. We always have nominees on our supervisory board, and we expect adequate returns for our investments. We have to have a clear exit strategy up front, and our investment holding period is between 3 to 8 years. What is specific for the EBRD is that in addition to our financing, next one please, the previous one, sorry. In addition to our financing, we bring added value to our investee companies, which derives from our political leverage due to the unique mandate and shareholder structure. Also, our investments in the company typically help our clients to attract further funding from other institutional or commercial investors. Another significant feature of the bank is that we provide access to funding for pre- and post-investment technical assistance for our investee companies. The EBRD has been operational in Macedonia since 1993. Today we are the largest institutional investor in the country with 1.1 billion euro invested in more than 80 projects. We have financed key infrastructure, including the key road and railways network and corridors, by which we are supporting the country in its regional integration. We believe that good transport links are crucial for strengthening the competitiveness of local companies, as well as for attracting FDIs. More than 40% of our financing in Macedonia has been channeled to the private sector directly or through the commercial banks and microfinance institutions. In the past few years, we have significantly stepped up our operations in Macedonia. In 2011, we have invested 220 million euro in 13 projects. And this year, we have already approved financing for 12 projects with total financing of 137 million. But we still have a few more projects to close until year-end and expect that we will invest 140 to 160 million in 16 to 18 projects, which is a significant amount for the country and definitely a record number of transactions in Macedonia since its operations. In Macedonia, we can use and have already used all the financing instruments that I have already mentioned. We have financed micro enterprises and small and medium enterprises, mainly through credit lines to the local banks or through our equity investments in the local banks, but also with direct financing. We have also financed large corporates, regardless whether they are fully domestically owned or have foreign investors. Also, we have done 2 so far only equity investments in private companies. One is a small family-owned business, small but growing fast and successfully. Family-owned business that is Vitalia, where we are partner with the family. And we had also invested in Tikves, but exited this investment a few months ago. An important achievement, an important instrument for our operations in Macedonia was the establishment of the local enterprise facility in 2006. That is a joint facility of EBRD and the Italian government. And what was important is that with this instrument, we were able to decrease our minimum investment amount to 1 million euro, because otherwise, as you may know, it is typically 5 million euro for the EBRD. And this instrument also offered us a streamlined internal approval procedure, which enables us to be more efficient with approving these investments in the range of 1 to 10 million euro. There are no product or sector type of limitations that we can finance. We don't have a country limit. We don't have constraints on how much we invest in the country, and we will continue to invest and to even to do even more in the future. Basically, we can invest across all sectors with the exception of tobacco and hard liquor. And finally, I would like to draw your attention to the EU and IFI initiative that I've mentioned. Given that there is no significant dedicated activity of venture capital and private equity funds in the region, there is a clear need to cover this financing gap. The EBRD and the EU and the European Investment Fund, which is a member of the European Investment Bank Group, work jointly on developing the Western Balkans Enterprise Development and Innovation Facility, or so-called EDIF, under which two funds will be established. One will be the Enterprise Innovation Fund, or ENIF, that will focus on seed and early stage equity investments in innovative MSMEs. And the second one will be the Enterprise Expansion Fund, or ENEF, that will focus on expansion capital equity investments in high growth SMEs. ENIF, the Innovation Fund, will be managed by a fund manager to be jointly identified by the IFIs, while the EBRD will play a role of investment advisor to ENEF, the Expansion Fund. This role will be entrusted to the bank based on its regional experience and expertise and the success achieved with the implementation of LEF, the facility I've mentioned earlier, across the Western Balkans and lately the broader region, including Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey. And I will close my presentation with a few words on NF. The fund will have a capital base of 50 to 55 million euro and will be coupled with parallel financing or co-financing facility of same amount, which will be provided by the EBRD. It will be a regional fund covering the whole Western Balkans, including Croatia, and there will be no country quotas. The fund will be managed by experienced EBRD staff, EBRD team, which is already operating in the region, and it will benefit from the bank's sector, regional and legal expertise, as well as logistical capability of the existing network of regional offices in the region, or resident offices in the region. Investments will be made across diversified sector base in the range of 1 to 10 million euro, and the investment holding period will be 3 to 6 years. The fund will only take minority stakes with significant control over the investee company's operations and with clear exit strategy. Significant resources will be available for project preparation and execution, as well as, and most importantly, for monitoring and post-investment value creation. The fund will be established by year-end, and it is expected to become operational in the first quarter next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you. Dragan, you want to talk a little bit about your role and the function of your bank for development and promotion?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning on behalf of Macedonian Bank for Development Promotion. First of all, I would like to thank Macedonia 2025 for being invited for this important summit. I'm really glad to be here. At the beginning, I would like to briefly present the activities of Macedonian Bank for Development Promotion, about who we are and what we do. As it was presented here by the chair, Macedonian Bank for Development Promotion is a specialized export and promotional bank of the Republic of Macedonia, and its prime role is to support the economic development of the country. On the top of this, we are export credit agency of the Republic of Macedonia. The three main goals of our banks are first, increase of growth and employment potential, and these are the main topics, I think, for all of us involved in banking, finance, politics, and of course in development banking. The second objective of our bank is, and is very important to us, promotion of Macedonian export. And the third one is, of course, development of small and medium-sized enterprises and the mid-caps as a backbone of Macedonian economy. The bank is owned, as I said, by the government, but is self-sustaining institution. So cost of our operation are fully covered out of fees we generate out of our activities. Our funding is predominantly from the international financial institutions, and these funds should be, of course, returned back, and therefore we do not provide subsidies, we only provide lending. In the last several years, the bank had experienced rapid growth. For example, the total volume of lending of our bank was only 1% of the total corporate lending in Macedonia, while in 2011 the percent was 8.7, and the trend is still going up. These achievements make us important, make us proud, but having said this, we are fully aware that this is not a situation that should persist for a too long time, because otherwise it would be indication that the markets and especially commercial banks cannot provide adequate financing solutions. In the last 3 years, we have managed to finance more than 2,000 projects, and we did about 250 million euros in loans. Mainly what we do are two basic products, lending products and credit insurance products. The major value added we think of our products are first longer term maturity of our loans, that they go up to 10 years. Usually other financial institutions cannot match these maturities. Maximization of a profit is not in our focus, and therefore we can afford to offer our services at a rate that are usually below the prevailing market rates. And of course, as a development bank, we are taking a higher risk than other financial institutions, as is the case with the insurance of political and commercial risk. Our lending products are offered through predominantly on lending activities through commercial banks. But in 2012, in order to be more closer to the companies, more closer to the final beneficiary, we had introduced several direct lending products. But still, on lending is still our main business. We implement several on lending products, and we have no limits, sectoral limits or industry limits. Our loans range from very small amounts, from 10,000 euros, and they go up to 12.5 million euros. We have specialized lending facilities for financing investments in fixed assets. We also have specialized facilities for exporters for financing their working capital needs to prepare production and to deliver the goods abroad. We do not only provide financing for commercial banks, but with some of the products we also provide them with the guarantees. Actually, we participate in the risk, in the great risk share together with the commercial banks. We also very active in the financing of ag business and production and the processing of agricultural goods. And we also have some facilities for financing renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. The largest on-lending program we have is the one financed by European Investment Bank. Since 2009, we managed to secure 3 on-lending programs with EIB in a total amount of 250 million euros. We are still implementing these products, and so far we have financed more than 800 projects, 800 companies. The interest rate on this program is subsidized by the government, and therefore the commercial banks can offer these loans to commercial entities, to predominantly SMEs at very favorable rates. I would like to, even though it was said yesterday that we already agreed with EIB to extend this product for additional 100 million euros in 2013, and these funds will be available for Macedonian companies once we fully utilize the current program. We also, as I said, in 2012, introduced some direct lending products. We launched export factoring operation, and we want to, with this product, to provide companies with financing based on their receivables and not based on their fixed asset, as the case usually is in Macedonia. The second program we have is a very specific product. It's export credit insurance, which protects against the risk of non-payment of foreign buyers. Most companies today, if they want to sell overseas, if they want to sell abroad, one of the biggest concern they always have is how it's going to be paid. And one of the ways to secure the payment is to insure the receivables. Our insurance policy cover both commercial and political risk, and our coverage is up to 90% of the risk, and 10% is covered by our clients. We have some clients here in the room that and members of Macedonia 2025 that are fully aware about the products we provide. If a buyer, if a foreign buyer doesn't pay, actually he can make a claim on MBDP, and we'll make a claim payment, and then we'll take an action against the foreign buyer in hope for recovery. And I would like to end my presentation with my personal view, what is needed to be done in order to ramp up the lending in Macedonia. I think that basically there were no major shortfalls in access to finance in Macedonia, even though a lot more have to be done. But I think that one of the major things we should do in these difficult, demanding times is to reestablish the trust. Namely, if you look at the figures of credit growth in period from 2006 to 2008, we'll see that the growth was between 25, credit growth was between 25 to even 40%. What has changed since then, we think, is the trust, because all other elements are more or less same like they were before. It is in the period 2006-2008, there were no more funds available interest rates were more or less on the same level. Collateral requirements were as restrictive as they are today. Financial reporting of the companies or quality of financial reporting of the companies do not change much. What's changed the most, we think, is the trust. And I think that all of us involved in banking and finance, we have to do a lot in order to rebuild the trust between the banks and the clients. Because we bankers, what we are doing all the time is building the trust on both sides in the balance sheet. That is the business predominantly we are doing. So I will stop here, having in mind the time concerns, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Dragan. Thank you. So, Lazar, it would be great if you can give us a little bit of an overview, a quick overview of your organization, and just talk a little bit about some of the. You deal with a very small businesses who are just about starting, family-owned businesses, and you're facilitating more than just money here. So, talk a little bit about your organization very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. MGIS stands for Macedonia Enterprise Development Foundation, established almost 15 years ago. When we started, we were thinking how to invest the money that we had. One of the options was to become a bank. At that time, banking was not so efficient, and we decided, instead of investing only 12 million, to use the banks and to leverage what we had as a story to tell, and try to mainstream our mission through the banking sector and also through committed microfinance institutions, because we were targeting. It's good that we hear about billions and millions, but we were more focused on 99% of the Macedonian companies, which is the reality, asking, I don't know, between 2,000–3,000 euros and somewhat 100,000 euros. So we tried to fill the gap, because that was one of the missions, to fill the gap in the market. That was one of the ways how we did it, and I often joke that I will be a very happy man when I lose my job, because my country and my country will be doing well. I'm becoming very close to that, I must be honest. And I'm very happy to do it, because I feel the pressure now to be more inventive and to be more creative. Not me, our team also. So, to give you the retrospective, one of the banks, most of the banks that we started at that time were less than 100 million in total assets, less than 100 people. Now they are a couple of times more. Being on the European soil, we are kind of some issues are predestined. Banking will remain, as in Europe, will remain the major financing source for small businesses, and we have been supporting that very much in the whole period. Apart from the financial services, meaning debt financing to banks and to micro and small businesses, we also had complementary components in terms of trainings, both to businesses but also to bankers, to credit officers. We also had study visits, and that was pretty much a development. Nowadays, banks are doing its business. Of course, they have problems, but the success is immense, is tremendous. While trying last year and 2 years before, while trying to think what would be the avenues for our future growth and what would be our reinvention in the sense of being relevant and still filling the gaps that are on the market, we came to the conclusion that we should, in the financial services, we should try to be a bit still more focused on debt financing, maybe go into details such as, I don't know, Macedonia is becoming closer to EU, is a candidate country. Will become and is becoming is using EU funds. One of that is IPERT for agriculture and rural development. So we are trying to develop some mechanisms to provide financing for that and increase the chances of Macedonian businesses getting being more successful in acquiring the funds from EU. Also trying to go a bit with part of our portfolio, regardless how small it is. Let's say 25 to 30% of our portfolio at least to go in more riskier investments. That would be from next year on. Currently we are considering what are the options. On the, we call it non-financial side, we have introduced several issues. For instance, we are trying to understand how is the entrepreneurial spirit in Macedonia. So we are doing for Macedonia a research called Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, or GEM, under the auspices of Babson College and London Business School. You know, trying to understand the, more on a more scientifically based the Macedonian entrepreneur spirit, why people open business, why people don't open business, why they close, why they don't close, etc. Part of that has always been promoting successful Macedonian entrepreneur stories. So we are also involved in promoting Entrepreneurs of the Year, trying to increase, to encourage Macedonian people to open businesses, to venture a bit in business, because the future, I mean, regardless of how many FDIs we would have, we still need genuine Macedonian entrepreneurship to be developed, and that genuine Macedonian entrepreneurship needs small equity, small debt financing. So we are pretty much focused on that field.
Well, thank you, Lazar. You're doing God's work by funding a lot of small businesses in Macedonia. Thank you. Ivan, so you're the CEO of the Macedonian Stock Exchange, and maybe just a little bit of a setup, I think. Question for you is, what is the current state of the exchange in Macedonia? What is the current state of just kind of the volumes you're saying, interest from just inside the country to access equity markets through your exchange from Macedonian businesses side, and also foreign investors coming through your exchange into the country and saying, you know what, we want to take some minority positions into some of these interesting companies who are listed on your exchange. Just give us a little bit of an overview.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. First, let me express that I'm very pleased that I have opportunities to speak in front of this audience. Also, I would like to congratulate to the organizers for this summit, because definitely this is kind of event that this country and our economy needs, and I hope that it will become a tradition. About securities markets in general, or Macedonian Stock Exchange and Macedonian securities markets in particular. First, let's start my presentation with a sentence that on a very general level, there are two main issues about securities markets. It's, let's say, information and size. So about information, it's very obvious. So gathering, processing of information, distributing of information is crucial, but even more essential is, let's say, the whole issue of size. So size of companies on supply side of the market, size of profits planned and delivered, then magnitude and absorption capacity of the demand side, so which is liquidity, and also, if you want, size of expectations. So as Macedonia is small and open economy, and in general as economy is very dependent on foreign capital flows, it even stands even more for securities markets within such kind of economy. That's why this kind of events and communicating and exchanging information about our market with you is very important as another channel for promoting our market and companies that are traded on our market. So about our stock exchange, Macedonia Stock Exchange was set up back in 1996, so we have around 16 years of history. Let's say maybe we can derive that we went through few different development phases. At the very beginning, it was part of all these reform processes in 90s, so we were set up mainly to absorb some of the privatizations that were going on. Then the second development phase was, let's say, concentration of ownerships created by initial privatization. And then on the wave of global and regional surplus of liquidity, which is our boom period, 2005, 2007, not only our exchange, but all exchanges in the region literally exploded, and this was, let's say, time for which is our benchmark for the maybe not so close future. And now we are in the phase in which we are actually in the completely new environment. Real challenges are ahead of us, but I would add not ahead of Macedonian Stock Exchange, but ahead of the whole economy in the context which was previously discussed about need for having some kind of balance between banking financing and non-banking financing. So, because it is, I am completely aware that this economy will be bank dominated for a long period of time, but some small functioning part for equity financing is essential, because whole experience throughout the world shows us that within a good and functioning segment within financial sector that is offering risk capital, it is not possible to finance good entrepreneurial ideas, to have success stories, and if you want to create better growth rate, creating jobs, and at the very end increasing the living standard. So this is issue for all policy makers, both in public sector and also in private sectors, because this is probably it will become even more important because of the consequences of the financial crisis on banking sector, prudent regulation, strengthening all this capital adequacy and other ratios. So small part of this economy should be relying on equity financing. More particular about our market structure, currently we have 32 listed companies, but legal framework is such that there is a obligation for trading through organized markets. So basically or theoretically, all corporations in Macedonia are our potential trading material. So there are something more than 500 corporations in Macedonia. Among these 32 listed companies, we would like to believe that we have quite good industry representation, because we have pharmaceutical, alkaloid is there, then we have few banks. Actually, among the exchanges in former Yugoslavia, we are, let's say, most banking exchange. So we have 4 listed banks. Then we have companies from construction industry, oil distribution and energy, wine industry, then tourism, metal processing, food industry, agriculture. So it's good representation. We actually lack one very important sector, which is IT and telecommunication, because our main telecommunication company was privatized with strategic investors, so they did not apply for listing. A few days ago, actually, government announced new set of measures changing the legislation, with which it will be, let's say, kind of channeling and directing some other companies to become listed companies, which will definitely immediately increase the level of transparency on the market, and I hope on a mid-term it should increase the turnover and maybe also let's say stimulate some companies to approach the market for raising capital. Few statistical maybe data. Our market is, let's say, or was quite heavily relying on foreign portfolio investors from the region, mainly from countries from former Yugoslavia. Currently, in the capital outstanding of these 32 listed companies, 23% are owned by foreigners, but this percentage was 35 4 years ago. About participation of foreign investors in the turnover, let's say up to end of September this year, on a buy side of the market, 11% were foreigners, and on a selling side, 25. But if you look at the statistics on a more, let's say, long period, we actually have this statistic starting from 2005. So in these 7 years, on a buying side, 40% were foreigners and 20% were on selling side. So net inflow of foreign portfolio investor is still present. But however, in all this cycle, we all had and have crisis after crisis, new crisis, etc. All indicators are quite worsened. So currently, for example, market capitalization of these 32 listed companies is around 500 million euros, which is around 5% of the GDP, which is very, very small percentage. Even if we add this so-called special reporting obligation companies, they are not listed, but they are reporting also quarterly to our regulator, to SEC, then the market cap is around 2 billion euros, which is around 23% of the GDP. Again, very small percentage compared with more mature market. This, on one side, speaks about underdevelopment of our securities market, but also, if you want to be an optimist, it also speaks about potentials that this market have. So the sources of, let's say, increasing this number is either new listings, new instruments, or price appreciation that will actually rise up the percentage. But as we also heard globally, crisis is also about opportunity. So there are some opportunities on the market. Indicators are, for example, cumulative price earnings indicator of our main index, companies comprising 10 companies comprising our main index, is less than 10. Price to book cumulative is 0.6 in the moment. Our main sectors, which are actually financial services and pharmaceuticals, are doing well. Maybe the pace is smaller, but there is a still good tendency even in this environment. So I don't want to take more time. I hope that it will be questions about liquidity, our regional cooperation as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Appreciate it. So our last panelist, and then we go quickly to questions here, because I'm sure I have a lot of questions. So I hopefully the audience will also ask a lot of questions here. So Filip, maybe instead of talking a little bit about Ohridska banka, I'm sure the audience is probably familiar with just who you are, but talk a little bit about how active you are right now as far as lending. What do you think type of opportunities you're looking at? How aggressive you are as a bank right now in the market? Maybe that, then we go to questions and we'll revisit again.
Thank you very much, Robert. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished guests, as the sole representative of the Macedonian commercial banking community on this panel, it is my honor and great privilege to present a banker's view on the extraordinary growth opportunities in the Macedonian business sector and the way investors stand to benefit from the unique set of conditions this country has to offer. I'm aware of the time constraints for panelists, and I will cut right to the chase. I've prepared a couple of slides, but there's a bit too many for me to handle, so I asked Elena to help me out a little bit. The banking sector in Macedonia comprises 17 banks, including several large, medium players, and the bank that I represent, SG Ohridska banka, part of Societe Generale Group, belongs to the group of banks with a more prominent presence, with a market share of approximately 8%, SGO Banka is considered ranks as the 4th largest bank on the market. Macedonian banks have traditionally been very supportive of and involved with the Macedonian business community, with growing credit exposures, notwithstanding the crisis. I know that, or probably you know, that charges have been leveled in the past 2 years, that banks prefer T-bills to lending, to corporate loans. Banks don't want to get their hands dirty with corporate lending. I can assure you that those charges don't stand up to scrutiny. Banks here in Macedonia are really hardwired to the business community, and they do a very good effort of supporting the Macedonian companies within the regulatory framework that exists in this country. Notwithstanding rising NPLs, non-performing loans, attributable mostly to debt crisis spillover from the Eurozone, the banking sector is considered stable, robust, and largely impervious to external shocks. Macedonian banks submit to stringent prudential controls imposed by the regulatory authorities. The loans and deposits evolution, to answer Robert's question, in spite of the crisis, growth of loans and deposits continues unabated. SGO Banka stands out as one of the fastest growing banks, with annual growth rates of loans and deposits exceeding 30% in the past 3 years on an annual basis. With 28 branches covering all important towns and cities in Macedonia, SGO Banka offers full nationwide coverage. And early next year, early 2013, we intend to relocate our head office from this great city of Ohrid to Skopje and further reinforce our presence in the nation's capital. Sajen Group maintains a presence in 10 out of 12 Balkan countries and in another 67 countries around the world, which provides for terrific synergies from which our corporate clients, large corporate clients, trans-regionals, stand to benefit. The corporate portfolio of OBSG has increased by 25% each year for the past 3 years and continues to grow significantly in 2012 in defiance of the economic downturn. OBSG has access to abundant funding from a variety of domestic and international sources and maintains traditionally strong relationships with international financial institutions. And I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the Macedonian Bank for Development Promotion, to the EBRD, and to IFCs that are on there in the audience, for their excellent cooperation with commercial banks as purveyors of competitive funding from foreign sources for on-lending to the Macedonian business community. That has benefited not just our bank, but basically most of the banks, or all the banks in Macedonia. Next slide, please. Prodigious use of foreign credit lines does not diminish the significance of corporate deposits as a funding source for OBSG. Our deposit balances have grown by an average of 50% annually in the past 3 years, which may be taken as a measure of trust by our clients in the security and the stability of our bank. Now, going back to the main topic of this summit, a SWOT analysis of Macedonian business. Based on the information disseminated in previous panels and presentations, it is plain to see that Macedonia offers an attractive business environment in terms of low cost of labor, low taxes, stable financial sector, sound macroeconomic fundamentals, and proximity to and accessibility of EU markets. However, bankers such as myself still observe several flaws and weaknesses, which are essentially opportunities in disguise for investors. Fragmentation of companies within industries, insufficient economies of scale, insufficient production capacity to supply large markets in the EU, in the United States and elsewhere, Eastern Europe as well, Russia, insufficient capital spending, and an excessive reliance on bank debt, as well as rampant liquidity shortfalls. We believe outside investors can help surmount these weaknesses and earn an extraordinary rate of return in the process. According to internal OBSG research, approximately 30% of otherwise viable investment projects fail to materialize for reasons attributable to a shortage of capital, which can be overcome by raising capital, by injecting additional risk-bearing capital. But of course, this is easier said than done, as we all know. And of course, there's a lot of misperceptions on both sides of the equation, both sides of the divide. Those of you who practice investment for a living know firsthand how difficult it can be to raise capital from investors on the one hand, and on the other hand, to convince entrepreneurs to accept outside investors as their partners to grow and develop their businesses. And of course, this problem is not specific just to Macedonia. So it's important that we debunk the myths at the outset. And of course, there are all kinds of fallacies in circulation. The favorite one in Macedonia is that a company doesn't need to raise capital as long as it can offer mortgages to secure bank loans. But in our view, real estate is no substitute for equity. Collateral resembles basically the life jacket underneath your seat when you're flying on an airplane. On some level, you're glad it's there, but you don't want to imagine ever having to use it. So to conclude this presentation, bankers, investors, and entrepreneurs should work side by side to share information about the opportunities that exist out there, to debunk misconceptions, and to enhance mutual understanding and cooperation, and of course to engage in profitable investment opportunities. Their roles are complementary and mutually supportive. Risk-bearing capital is a prerequisite for companies to grow their business and to sustain additional bank debt, and for banks to disburse additional financing to the business community. No matter how much we want to lend more money, and allow companies to realize on their potential quicker, faster, we are constrained by capital structures, which oftentimes are highly leveraged. Investors may take advantage of the growth opportunities in basic industries, such as food processing, food production, parts subcontracting, in a business environment which is highly conducive to growth, and earn attractive rates of return, which may not be readily available in other parts of Europe. Ajde da zaključam na makedonski. Na Ohridska banka doblest i založba je timski duh i timska soravodka, so partneri, so predprijemači i so investori. Zajedno tje pomestime granicite na ekonomski odrazvoj i prosperitetot na Republika Makedonija. Благодарам за вниманието.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you. Well, thank you, panelists. So we did start a little bit late, so we do have, don't worry, so we have an extra 10 minutes for people who think the coffee breaks in 5 minutes. Actually, we have extra 10, 15 minutes there if people want to stick around. But what I'd like to do is maybe open this for questions by the audience, and then introduce yourself as well.
Anna Arsov,
yeah.
Wife of Robert Arsov, and a fellow banker from United States. Actually, I'm a credit officer at UBS, so I obviously lend in the US and in Western Europe. So I'm particularly curious to the panelists about the intricacies of the bankruptcy law, and from a lending perspective, both from a debt and equity perspective. So personally, I'm obviously used to a much more developed and pretty strict market from a legal perspective. And I'm particularly curious of how do you deal in any kind of particular changes, developments from the bankruptcy side, both from debt and equity investor perspective. Thank you.
So do you want to, maybe, Philip, you want to take that question?
Sure. Bankruptcy law receivership has undergone a significant transformation in the past couple of years. And, but even more important than that, bankruptcy is the final stage. The important thing is the ability to obtain summary judgment in courts, to enforce our receivables, to enforce creditors' rights. And this has really improved tremendously in the past couple of years. Just the time that I spent in Macedonia, which now is coming on 4 years, there have been great strides. And today, the workings of the court generally are very conducive to quick enforcement of creditors' rights.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ljube Trpevski. I'm university professor. I have two questions. One is for our Austrian guest. There are several Austrian companies in Macedonia in the real sector. Also, the insurance company from Austria is also present in Macedonia, but we don't have the Austrian banks present in Macedonia. And the question is, why? What is the main reason of that? Because as it was mentioned yesterday and today, we have macroeconomic stability all these years, and we have the sound banking system and the stable banking system, and the banks are making profits in Macedonia. The second question is to Mr. Martinovsky, or maybe is more for the representative of the governments. Our bank, so-called Export-Import Bank, our Exim Bank, in order to fulfill the main goal to promote export, because without high rates of export, we cannot have high rate of GDP. In order to promote, we have to capitalize the bank. The capital of the bank is very small and cannot fulfill the main goal. Mr. Yordanov is present here. He is involved in the civil engineering business. Our civil engineering companies are losing on the international tenders not because of the price, but because the other companies, foreign companies, they offer a better finance of that tenders. So is it intention of the government to recapitalize the bank? Because if it is stay such as it is, cannot fulfill the main goal.
Well, thank you for those questions. Why don't we do one by one, and maybe if I can ask everybody if they can just maybe stick to one question, then we'll go back at it again. I think you did ask 2 or 3 questions there. So maybe the first question is to Kurt, and then we give opportunities to maybe some other people to ask questions, and maybe we revert back to your questions here. So Kurt, why don't you answer the first question here about why are Austrian banks not present in Macedonia?
I would like to answer this question from the perspective when I was working at the EBRD, because I knew what all the foreign investors were looking at and where they're coming. And it was actually very difficult at that time to interest foreign investors, banks, to come into Macedonia. And there were quite a few negotiations taking place, including Austrian banks, including also Italian banks, on this, but it was really that it was the Greeks and the Slovenians and SocGen also that made a relatively small investment. They looked at one point at a much bigger one, and then you also had Komercijalna Banka here, where actually the shareholders were not really interested at one point to sell, and then the strategics were really very much involved in it. And then if you look at it from the point of view that this is a relatively small country and a relatively small market, so it just didn't happen, and there were not the opportunities there for large banks. That's really the explanation which I can give to that, really from what I've been observing, what happened, 5 to 10 years ago, really. And this is really when all investments were made.
Okay.
Thanks. My name is Velle. I was on yesterday's panel for foreign investments. So I want to add to a point that Kurt raised earlier about the regional, smaller, fragmented markets when it comes to investments and the challenges with the exit strategies. So just put it out there more directly. How did these limits or challenges on exit strategies, how do they dictate the type of opportunities you eventually evaluate and invest in, whether it's like a private equity or VC type of investment? Or in other words, what are some of the investable opportunities that you pass on or reject, in other words, because you have hard time with these exit strategies? And what sort of creative ways are you finding around it?
Yeah, so maybe I can answer from the first fund we had, because we exited all the companies. I'd say that, and it was a very good slide, I think, that Philip pointed out. Too often private equity people think IPO is the only way. And while I hope that that will ultimately happen and increase here, I think you should look at private equity as a range, early stage all the way up to more mature. I mean, it used to be venture all the way to private equity. It depends upon how you want to define that. We did not have difficulties in the sense of finding either strategic investors. If you look at Dnevnik, I think it was a very good sale to the Westdeutsche Allgemeine Zeitung. I think in case of T-Nex, there was interest from a Greek strategic, and in fact, that set the price, which was ultimately paid by the owner. It was a buyback, but it was a buyback at a very attractive IRR because we had a benchmark. So, I think one of the issues is not investing too much equity. If you force too much equity in, then getting 2 times or 3 times your equity is going to be very difficult. If you use equity in combination with leverage, etc., and use the time to improve the profitability of the company, you can actually achieve reasonable buybacks. So we'll do mezzanines in that context as well. Globally, we've done, as I said, 360 investments. We've done more than 200 exits, all from SMEs, all in markets that are, I think, not exactly mainstream. And I would say that the buybacks, they tend to be around 22%. The strategics tend to be about 30 to 35%, and selling to financial investors is our highest returns. Because when you have at the early stage and you've realized a certain amount of growth, now you're talking about fragmentation. If you can begin to show, like a T-Nex, there's a consolidation, there's a leadership, there's an ability to scale, whether on the distribution side or whether on the sourcing side or whatever, then it becomes quite interesting for strategics to buy, or of course for financial guys to buy, because there's financial money looking around. I think we'll be very compatible with the ENF side, because as you're looking for medium-sized companies effectively to grow, we would hope to sell some of our companies in to that group. It's an advantage on the entrepreneur. He can continue to grow with another financial investor. And it's an advantage for the region, because as the financial investor sees the scale of the company growing bigger, it becomes more attractive to strategic investors. Certainly you can begin to use optimal capital structures as well. Ultimately, banks are willing to lend at some level to that. So I would say that the focus has to be on the fact that the private equity is not monolithic. There's a row. There's earlier stage up to the higher stage. Similarly on banking, I think it's great on this panel that we see some earlier stage financial institutions and some larger scale. The exit side has to take that into account. In my view, having done this for more than 22 years, I think the biggest mistake is when fund managers on the private equity side are driven by fees. They want a big fund. They want to get fees on the big fund. You're going to get 2%, 2.5%, 1.5%, whatever on the fees. So then they push too much equity out. In India, as I know, I've been a resident for a while, there's an ag fund by a very prominent bank. It had a $10 million investment. A year after the investment, there's still $8 million in the bank. That's not going to provide a good exit. It's going to be very difficult unless the money is put in where it's used, where it's needed, where equity is then leveraged with appropriate other financing. The kind of growth to achieve the kind of returns that our investors are expecting won't be there. And the challenge here is to deliver that doing a small enough equity round. That's why this fund will have an equity and a mezzanine kind of capacity, because you really do need to look at that back end and develop the trust as well. So I think it's there, but it's not as conventional as you might see in the US or in England, for example.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Can I just add something to this? Is the challenge in very small equity investments in countries which are emerging or in transition really was to have an agreement between the fund manager and the owners. What is going to happen in the future? And that really was something which was very much affecting the exit and also the opportunities which are there. I'm sorry. No, but this is really has been a big challenge in the small funds when they started off here. But I can tell you, the very first fund which we invested was with Advent, and it was $30 million. And this was 15 years ago, but today they are doing over $1 billion, in the region. But they also changed their business model very much, right? So that's a very big difference. So I welcome very much the initiatives taken by the Macedonia 25 and also by the EBRD and your fund to really go into this, because if other entrepreneurs see how it works to work with private equity, they will come to that and they will understand what they have to do, and they have an equal partner who provides the money, and they provide the work and the technology and other contributions.
To share with us his views on the concessional financing available for companies in Central and Eastern Europe and Southeast Europe, and how that affects the total commercial lending. Let me just expand a little bit. A few months ago, I invited Robert, to speak in front of a panel of bankers and entrepreneurs at the Chambers of Commerce, and there were some people around the table who were asking about interest rates. And they were in the United States, and I believe they expected, to get some exciting, I would say, numbers on the lower end. But then Robert disappointed, many of them, telling them, well, they're not that low. Now, the other Martinovsky here in the panel, was talking about, how SMEs benefit from subsidized interest rates. But how that affects the overall lending? Perhaps also Philip might share a perspective.
So Kurt, why don't you address the first part of that question?
Well, I think it's very important that subsidized, I wouldn't call it subsidized lending, but lending at rates which are attractive for some investors, institutions like the EIB and other institutions, which provide these opportunities. And I also think this money should be mixed with commercial terms in the funding. And that's when you get a much better spread on this. But I'm not a believer in starting a business on the basis of getting a subsidy. I mean, that is not a good entrepreneur. If he only can make the money if he gets a subsidy to begin with. There should be incentives to start to cover startup costs and all this, but the business model has to be very solid.
Okay, as presented in my presentation, our rates are really subsidized, but I have to admit that we offer subsidized rate as a response to global economic and financial crisis. So this subsidized lending can be response of the government in the crisis time. But as I said, this is not a situation that should take a long time. Otherwise, as I said, markets are not performing. And if markets are not performing, then cannot speak about sustainable development or sustainable finance.
Right, so just to clarify this for people, I think we had a discussion here a couple months ago where obviously there's constraints on the banks to continue to commit funds and then unload the balance sheet on the back end at market terms where the underlying portfolio is actually potentially at a subsidized rate. So the question is, how long can this game continue without getting to a situation where you're lending at market and you're unloading your portfolio at the market? So do you think it's a situation right now where I think the banks are carrying lots of these loans from the historical kind of lending practices and some of the rates that were subsidized in the historical periods here in the recent history? Or so, what is the balance sheet situation of the banks currently, from your standpoint, in Macedonia?
Okay, maybe it's more question for Philip to tell us from his practical experience. But our subsidized interest rates are for new projects, for working capital financing, if it's a working capital financing, for expanding companies. So we can assume that some of the banking portfolio is refinanced by our affordable rates or subsidized rates. But we can say that most of the projects are new projects, so we cannot say that we refinance the old portfolio.
But you don't think the Macedonian banks have an issue from a balance sheet standpoint with the old portfolios, standpoint of the health of those portfolios, the non-performing loans? What do you think is the your perspective on that?
Oh, so.
I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot here. I know it's a sensitive information, but maybe you can just hear, because I actually heard a lot of positive things here today. I think there's a lot of money here available for companies to lend. So I'm just a little bit puzzled, because the feedback that at least we are getting here when we come here once or twice a year is, or some investors that come from outside, is, well, this lack of capital being put to work. So just a little bit from your perspective, I'm thinking balance sheets of the banks is potentially an issue, and then I'll talk on the supply side. What do you think from the potential opportunities to invest? What's causing the lack of kind of velocity of capital being committed at a higher rate here?
Actually, what we are, the bank sector was under pressure for many years to provide the rates that are below those that were prevailing. If we're talking about the non-performing loans, the non-performing portfolio of our bank, we can say that we have no problems with non-performing loans, because most of our clients are banks. So they pay their debts on a regular basis. But of course, during this period of economic turbulences, the non-performing portfolio of banks grew up. So we see statistical data at the beginning of crisis in 2008, 2009. The average non-performing portfolio of banks was about 6.5%. Nowadays, it is above 10%, between 10 and 11%.
It's almost doubled.
It's almost doubled.
And maybe Philip, to that second part of the question.
Absolutely. Just to elaborate on what Dragana said, of course, as I mentioned before, Sajan Ohridska Banka is flush with funds. We have all kinds of sources, foreign funding sources and domestic funding sources at our disposal. And of course, the money that we take from Dragan or from Elena or from Zoran, for that matter, we don't use that money, of course, to refinance non-performing portfolios. We use that money to finance new productive growth, where companies create the productive capacity to service those loans. Now, on the level of individual companies, we can only go so far until we reach a point. So we grant loans with moderation, but we're always very careful that the companies maintain the ability to repay those loans. And once we hit a ceiling, then we don't continue. And usually we recommend that the company taps into equity, or that the owner raises capital, or that the owner puts more of his own money at the disposal of his company, so that the capital structure is not disrupted. That's very important for us. Now, in terms of interest rates, of course, the money that we get from the MBDP takes precedence and is usually used for our very best clients. Once we run out of that money, then, of course, there's other sources with subsidized or semi-subsidized interest rates with grants or incentives at our disposal. We use that as well, and of course we also use our own sources from deposits and so on. And usually those loans are granted with an interest rate within the range of 7 to 9% for standard SMEs. Now, of course, the subsidized funds are more attractive with 5.5% on EIB. And again, we use that money strictly to finance new productive investment, not any kind of refinancing or stabilization of existing portfolios. I cannot vouch for the other banks, but this is the way how Sajan works.
Okay, thank you.
Bert, I thought maybe important for the diaspora to maybe quickly explain what's unique about a new fund in terms of private investments, and if other diaspora would want to invest, the process of to be able to accomplish that.
Thank you, Mike. Always a delay here, right? Thanks very much. I think it is unique in the sense, I mean, there's used to be a private equity fund, one of the first ones in the United States called AEA, which was basically funded by CFOs who knew business. And one of the unique things there, and one thing that I hope we can replicate here, is that successful business people who had experience were involved not necessarily in picking or structuring the deals, but involved after the investment in mentoring and in providing the kind of encouragement to those portfolio companies who were interested in growing. It was a very successful model, and it's part of what we're talking about here. I have never, we've done 32 funds all over the world. We've talked with a lot of diaspora. We have never seen organized diaspora. Normally, when you talk about a wealthy individual who's made it, wants to profile himself back in his own country, there is an element of ego, I don't know how else to say it, and there's an element of amateurish or dilettantishness. That's not the case with Macedonia 2025. What I'm impressed with is that there is a coordinated, a team kind of effort. There's an interest, and I think open to all businessmen, both in Macedonia and out, who are successful and who are interested in promoting the growth of Macedonia. And I think that attitude, the institutionalization, et cetera, this is something radical, something I know AID hasn't seen, other donors haven't seen. So the combination of both providing a focal point, which I think the other issue is that, as you know, Mike, leading that when you've talked with other diaspora members of Macedonia 2025, there is a team feeling and there's a desire, if one is participating and others should participate, it becomes a project, it becomes something that is important to you, and to see it succeed. And I think this is a model that could actually be developed in other countries, smaller countries. So in that sense, the ability to show the world that in Macedonia, a fund that's led by successful businessmen who do put their money where their mouth is, as you were saying yesterday, and who are also willing to open up their knowledge, access to other markets, access to other understandings, provides a great deal of encouragement to entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is a lonely thing. Many of our entrepreneurs' spouses are saying, why couldn't you work for the government, or why couldn't you work like a normal person? I mean, and why are you doing this kind of, crazy stuff, working 18 hours a day, and it's a roller coaster ride. I mean, on that, we did a great exit at the end. But I think I was joking yesterday, and it was great that some of the people who are here in good positions actually worked for OnNet as well. It was joking. It was like a 3-time startup. I mean, we literally hit 0 3 times, and you had to persevere. I think having access to successful businessmen who are able to share and say, look, I understand this. I mean, business is not a straight projection. It's an ups and downs, but you look at the long trend, you look at what's made to succeed. Even focusing on those 5 points, terrific points yesterday, I think that was made by Sammy at the dinner. Those kind of focus, those encouragement from, I think, the diaspora in this sense will be a powerful thing. So I see the combination of money, commitment, private sectors beginning. We love the DFIs. I don't want to say that the DFIs don't play a huge role. They do. They absolutely play a huge role, and I hope that we can continue to be complementary. But ultimately, the private sector has to take over. And I think what we're seeing in Macedonia, led in the first instance by successful businessmen, hopefully followed by, and we're in good conversations with a number of Macedonian institutions who also see this as, well, these guys are successful, they're putting it in, we want to do it. Of course, there's track record, et cetera, which is all helpful. But I think this is exactly, and our track record was made possible by USAID, by EBRD, by IFC. So this is part of the ecosystem. But I'm very glad to see the diaspora business taking an anchor role on this one. And to my mind, that's unique. I hope we can do this in other countries in the region.
Well, I think we're well overdue over our time as thought here. So I want to thank all the panelists, and just as a quick summary here, at least my impression from what I heard today is that we're in a really exciting juncture here, I think, for Macedonia, and I think all this excitement with respect to just new funds being available, coming into Macedonia to fund and facilitate growth for Macedonian businesses, exciting. So what I would do is I would encourage all entrepreneurs here and all investors to reach out immediately to all of these bankers and private equity investors and try to immediately initiate discussions, because I think it always comes first come first serve basis, right? So so with that, thank you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break and we'll start the next panel at 11:45.
Macedonia's potential are vast and enormous. On this panel, we will focus more, as my good friend Emil Christoph is saying, on action. What we are doing, globally competitive products and services of Macedonia, successful business models of cooperation. One of the endeavors of Macedonia 2025 is to stimulate the business cooperation. That is the best expressed in an interview given by our esteemed board member. I'm very sorry that he is not here, Mr. John Bitov Jr. He said a few weeks ago, my business experiences are a combination of many years of trial and error, learning step by step and working hard and long enough to power through all our mistakes. We have comprehensive business knowledge and can teach, motivate, encourage, and support young Macedonian entrepreneurs to create successful business stories. Today at this stage, we have a few examples of successful business stories. All panel participants have valuable experience to share with all of you on their successful Macedonian diaspora and vice versa business model. Our keynote speaker today is Ms. Vera Stavrov. Vera is a very dear colleague of mine. I am saying for her a superwoman. Macedonian by origin, and throughout all her career path, she retained the Macedonian charming persistence and willingness to succeed. Presently, Ms. Stavrov is President and CEO of Herbal Science and of Alkaloid USA, for which we are very proud. She is co-founder of Green Beauty and member of the board of Macedonia 2025. Vera is recipient of 2 US and international patents, a person who has pursued her inborn love for nature and translated into her work, through which she made the Macedonian herbal products known around the world. Vera, welcome, and you are welcome to share your experience with all of us here. Thank you.
Благодарам, Živko. I'm delighted to be in Ohrid, and I'm truly, truly honored to be on your panel and for us to share our experience of how we place the products for the US market. As most of you know, my strategic partner in Macedonia is Alkaloid. We started back in 2003 when Mr. Trajče Mukajetov was the president and CEO of Alkaloid. Together, we develop, produce, and sell high-quality organic products for the US market. Actually, our products are sold worldwide. Our first product for the US market was Aveda's Comforting Tea, which are the 2 samples right up there. For those of you who are not familiar with Aveda, Aveda is a division of Estee Lauder company. They specialize in high-end premium personal care products, and they have extremely high standards. They were producing the comforting tea in the United States and were having some technical challenges in terms of microbiological purity with their tea, and they were looking for a new supplier. So they had asked 4 people to submit product formulation for evaluation and then to present the products. We were one of those 5 people. There was no doubt in my mind that Alkaloid was going to be the partner of mine in producing the tea. I came here, we met with Alkaloid, and I presented the challenge. They took that challenge very seriously, and we had signed a confidentiality agreement with Aveda because they wanted us to produce the product per their spec with their formula. So we did that, and when I came in to taste the product, see, Alkaloid not only had produced the one formula that Aveda was looking for, they had actually had 4 additional variants of improved and better tasting product. So we asked Aveda if we can submit 2 submissions, the original formula plus the new and improved Alkaloid formula, and they allow us to do that. So we send in the products and for the evaluation, and 6 weeks later I got a call from the head of the R&D from Aveda, and I will never forget that phone call. He asked me first if I was sitting down and suggested that I sit down. He was afraid I was going to faint because he told me, he said, I have some good news and I have some bad news for you. He said, the good news is we love your tea and you scored in the top box on all of the categories. But the bad news is, he said, the numbers were skewed so much in your favor, we don't believe the numbers. So we're going to go ahead and repeat the test to validate the results. So needless to say, we prepared some more samples, sent them in. 6 weeks later, they confirmed the analysis. They awarded us the contract, and we launched the comforting tea and tea bags in the US market in May of 2004. We have been producing the tea since that time. The tea volume has increased 6-fold, and the tea is currently sold US and Canada, Europe, Russia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia, South America. The only continent that is not sold right now is Africa, and that, hopefully with the political situation stabling there, Aveda is looking to launch stores. Aveda, by the way, they own their own distribution channel. They sell through their stores and salons and spas, and they sample the tea in their stores, so the customers coming in while they're shopping or when they're getting their spa service done, they're tasting the tea. So in looking back as far as why we were successful with the Aveda, there's no doubt in my mind that if it wasn't for Alkaloid, there was no way that we would have been successful. And first of all, we needed to have all of the necessary certifications for the product. Alkaloid is a CGMP compliant facility. We also registered Alkaloid with the FDA, and in order to sell the food, we had to have that. Alkaloid is also ISO 9001 and 14001 certified. ISO is also HACCP certified, Hazard Analysis of Critical Control Points. And for those of you that are not familiar with that certification, in the United States, only seafood handlers are required to have that certification. No one else has. So people producing teas and food, none of them, there's not one that has that certification. Along with that, Alkaloid is certified organic worldwide, according to the USDA NOP standards, the EU directive, and also JAS. Aveda, as I mentioned, has very high standards. They wanted to be the tea 100% certified organic, and which meant not only the raw ingredients had to be certified organic, but the production facility had to be certified organic as well. So Alkaloid goes through a comprehensive audit. Control Union from the Netherlands comes in and does the auditing, a comprehensive audit once a year, and revalidates the certification. Second, Alkaloid had the know-how and experience required to produce the tea. Alkaloid has been making tea since 1936. They know how to make tea. And so that was the major reason why I think our tea was very well balanced. I mean, if you look at the tea, it's perfectly clear, it tastes delicious, and it's very efficacious. And third, Alkaloid was a willing partner, and they were willing to do anything to make sure that we had a successful project. They put in all the people and time and investment that was required through the beginning of the project. And fourth, and I think the most important as far as our success, is that Alkaloid uses the pharmaceutical mentality in producing the product. We follow all of the procedures from the pharma side in terms of training, in terms of the quality systems that they have in place. And when we, Aveda had expected just a simple certificate of analysis, COV, and product spec sheet, when we handed them, it was a technical dossier that resembled a drug file. They were so impressed, and there was no question. Plus, they loved our modified and improved formulation, and that is the one that they selected. After Aveda, we have a couple, by the way, so Aveda was being produced in the United States. We brought it here in the US. After Aveda, there was another company called Arbonne International, and they're based out of Irvine, California. They asked us to produce, again, submit samples, and we're currently producing their detox tea, which is the second package right there. Again, this tea was produced in the United States, and we brought the production here. And all of these are really more from a quality standard. They were really not looking for the cheapest products or whatever else. We were able to produce the highest quality standards at a very competitive price. We also have just started producing products for Swanson Health. They're based out of Fargo, North Dakota. And their teas were produced in China. And they were not happy with the quality. And we were exhibiting at the Natural Products Expo West in Anaheim, California last year, and the whole contingent from Arbonne, there were about 20 people that came in and asked us if we could produce the tea. They gave us the purchase order in May. We produced the tea and air freighted about 4 or 6 pallets to Irvine. They launched the tea in August, and the tea is selling very, very well. They're very happy with it. And so that is the private label side of the business. We are also growing the Good Nature brand. Good Nature right now is in 26 states in the United States, primarily in the South, through health food stores. Aches and Chamberlain, we're in Merz Apothecary, we're in Mothers in California, and we're in talks right now with Whole Foods and Kroger stores to carry the Good Nature brand. I just brought in a few examples of our benefit teas, which we affectionately call the BTs. And we're modifying the design right now, and they'll be ready in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And Whole Foods is waiting for them. And so that is the other side. In addition to that, I'd like to mention that in 2006, we established Alkaloid USA to market and sell generic pharmaceutical products in the US market. I'm not sure if some of you have heard of Cardinal Health. Cardinal Health is the second largest distributor in the US of pharmaceutical products. They're basically my back door. They're located in Dublin, Ohio. And we've been discussing with them about doing some private label generic pharmaceutical products for them for the US market. They came in and did an assessment audit of us about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, on 2 different occasions. There were 3 auditors that came in the first time from their Beckloff group who did a comprehensive audit, and we also did a pre-FDA inspection audit, and Alkaloid passed with flying colors. They were extremely pleased, and as we were getting ready to go, they sent in a very specific auditor for the type of drugs that we were looking to launch. And he came in, and again, that audit report, the results were excellent. So Alkaloid is ready, and I couldn't be happier to have a partner like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vera. Another person with us today is the man who arrived in the USA around 11 years ago as exchange student to now be a lifetime member of the CEO clubs of New York City. His list of collaborators includes members of the US Senate and House of Representatives. With his brilliant ideas and sense of good judgment, strong willingness and persistence, he built his company, EMSA Solar, to be one of the most successful business models in the world and a recognizable American brand in renewable energy industry. Mr. Emil Hristov, CEO of EMSA Solar, USA, and a board member of Macedonia 2025, the youngest, will tell you his unique and very interesting life and business story. Emil.
Thank you, Živko. I do wonder for how much longer I'm going to be the youngest, but hopefully a few more years. I'm happy to be here with everyone. It's been a great pleasure to speak with many interesting and excited people, and hopefully we can add some more excitement with this panel. But I'm happy to hear that Vera has had, probably the best partner from Macedonia. When I decided to come to Macedonia in 2009, I took more of I call it the Macedonian approach. Let's start one by one instead of just going and build direct relationships and go big fast. So I believe in building things from scratch. So I came to Macedonia in 2009 and just hired a few people and started with simple tasks for my construction management company. So they were handling a lot of, a lot of bidding, construction projects, bids for government projects in the US, and they were handling them from here. So that was the beginning. And then the people is what attracted me to stay here and grow the team. So we went from 2 people up to 20 people. And the story was that it really was the people, the sticking point. So we first thought of Macedonia, let's build a back office where they'll do some processing work for less. And because the construction market became very competitive and almost non-existent in 2009, so Macedonia allowed us to not just stay in business, but continue growing and not worry about cost as much. So that was my first collaboration with Macedonian people in my business career. And slowly, when we introduced EMSA Solar in 2010, it was a no-brainer that we would continue in Macedonia. So we, again, started directly with servicing the company from Macedonia. But this time, instead of saying, let's use it as a back office, we decided to actually integrate the 2 offices, and we actually called into one virtual office that works as one. It's not Macedonian, it's not the US, we're one EMSA Solar. Working from 2 different locations. So that proved, again, very successful. We were able to do things that other companies in our market could not do it as easily because our, most of our people were in Macedonia, so for them, whether we worked in New Jersey or New York or Massachusetts, it didn't make any difference. For them, it was just another project, versus when you're kind of tied to a location. For the people in New Jersey, it was more difficult to convince them to go to Massachusetts than Macedonia. So it proved as a great benefit for us not to think with any borders. So it allowed us to grow and grow freely. So that was one example, but I'm not going to talk so much about that because it depended on me the most, of how I grew that company and that relationship with Macedonia, my Macedonian entity. But I'll talk a little bit more about, in the process, I got more and more interested in working with Macedonian vendors for whatever my needs were, anytime possible. So just the way I thought about when should I hire a Macedonian employee, I started thinking the same way about when should I hire a Macedonian vendor. So just figuring that if you hire a vendor in the US, most likely it's going to get done somewhere else anyways. So why not go directly to the source? So I worked with a reputable Macedonian IT company on my first project, and IT company. And the experience was, I'm going to be both positive and kind of like not negative, but kind of show the difficulties that it's not perfect, just like when you work anywhere in the world. Things are not always perfect. But it was a simple project that turned to be not so simple at one point because of gap in understanding of what we expect in the US versus what is acceptable to people in Macedonia. But being that the company was already international, we went through some back and forth, and we resolved it. The benefit of that company in finding us was that they had actually a presence in the US, and they approached us. So again, my message is, if you want to do business outside of Macedonia, you have to find those links somehow. This company was lucky to have people in the US, and they approached us. What they weren't so lucky is that they didn't have enough American people, or people, even if they were Macedonian, that had lived in the US for a little bit longer, so that the expectations would be aligned a little bit more. So that was a little bit of a gap. My second experience is my more recent experience with a new company that I'm starting up, Servo Technologies, which is a technology company in the data acquisition space, monitoring of solar systems and energy efficiencies of buildings. And so we decided to develop the software in Macedonia. So again, it was, people were excited, they worked hard. We set out the schedule, and everything was fine until the expectations of how things should look and function, really kind of like the most important thing. So they were very good at the back-end work. Work moved really fast, and then we came to the what it should look like. So we had gone through examples, and we showed them what we wanted to look like approximately, by examples. And one misunderstandings, which again, it's as much as our mistake as it's theirs, but was here in Macedonia, copying and pasting is a lot more acceptable. So what we showed them, they basically copied another company's user interface, and they said, well, you told us you like that one. So that was a little bit of the downside. So again, the people are very smart, they work hard, they're creative, but what I felt was the gap was the understanding and the expectations and the communications, like how detailed do you need to communicate with them was always the question. So that's been like the general experience that I've had so far with Macedonia, which is mostly positive. That's why I'm still here. I will continue to come here and help in the process.
How many employees do you have?
Right now, we're 15 in one group, and we have 7 people, actually 5 people now in a different group, which is more accounting, property accounting only. So overall 20. So I want to speak a little bit more, or to close it with, about how we can get more participation from the Macedonian businesses with the diaspora or outside of Macedonia. And my general perception is that a lot of people, when I come to Macedonia, they say, let's do something together, or so that we sit down and we talk, and they want something to happen. And it doesn't happen. So the companies that I have worked with, they've reached out to me. They found me, they found what I need, and they've proposed a service. And so again, my message is for the people in Macedonia, if you want to work with, the diaspora is probably your best bet when you go outside of Macedonia, because you can at least get through the first stage of understanding. So find out all of the businessmen, and there's a lot of sources through the Macedonian government, even the embassies, that you can reach out to business people in the US and Europe and find out what they do, go there, meet with them, and then you can think about working on a project together. So that's the easiest entry into the market. And I'm speaking from practical experience, because with my software development, we were their first client, because it was a new startup also. And now they have many more international companies, because now they also can use us as a reference as a US-based company, so it helps them in the process. And being that I'm also part of Macedonia 2025, I take the responsibility to also mentor as much as I can on the way. So that's been my great story, my story so far. I'm happy to be here. I will be here and help anybody in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. Now we have another member of Macedonia 2025. It's from our junior board. He is CEO of JMG Canada. He's Mr. Chris Pavlovsky. Chris has over 10 years of online advertising and marketing experience. His portfolio includes working with companies including but not limited to Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Virgin Mobile, Red Bull, and Microsoft Corporation. Mr. Pavlovsky is also the director of marketing for Next Giant Leap, a space exploration company competing for the $30 million Google Lunar X Prize. Chris has been nominated for the Young Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young for 2010, and I am very pleased to have another shining star on the panel with us today. Chris, please.
Thank you, Živko. I just want to say thank you to Macedonia 2025. This is a wonderful event. It's the first of its kind in Macedonia that I've ever seen, and the amount of people that have showed up and the people that have showed up is awesome. Anyways, I guess about 2-3 years ago at the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards event, I met John Bitov, a fellow Macedonian, and I was fortunate enough where he invited me for a dinner where I met Mike and Andriana and was introduced to MK 2025, and they asked me to be part of their junior board, so thank you. At the same time, a little bit of background, I own a content distribution company in Canada where we also do online advertising. It's kind of like a two-model business. Our partners include Bell Canada and Microsoft, Yahoo, and among many others. And I guess during that period, I've ventured quite a bit in the world to look for programmers and development of our properties, of our websites, and various other things. And I've stopped in Argentina. I had a few guys in Argentina and Buenos Aires. That worked out to be kind of okay, but it was a lot more trips than I wanted, and didn't work out exactly the way I wanted. So then I went to India and I tried companies similar to like Infosys and many others. And I realized that when you give them a wireframe or you give them your SRS document of what exactly you want to get built, they build it exactly the way it says in there. And if you forget a little thing here and there, they won't think out of the box to try to build it the way an American would build it in most cases. So in all cases, I always opted after my experiences in Argentina and in India to build everything in-house in Canada. So have our developers there and try to build the best product that I could. And it wasn't until a couple years ago I had a cousin visit me from Macedonia, and which brought me back to Macedonia for more of a, kind of an examining of the marketplace. And with that, I met Ilcho Bojchevsky, who is my president here of Cosmic Development, and without him I wouldn't have been able to start Cosmic. And what I noticed in Macedonia is that there was really talented people. Everybody was really educated, the unemployment was read to be really high, and I thought there was an opportunity here. Well, I can give back to where my parents came from, and I could try to do one more kick at the can, kind of say, at opening up a development office in Macedonia. So originally it started off as, you know, I think it was in October 2010 to work a little bit on the properties that I had for JMG. And then I realized the product that I was getting was actually really, really good. And I'm like, okay, this can turn into something. This looks kind of, there's some potential here. So I came back in February 2011 and I told Ilcho, okay, we're gonna start a company in Macedonia. And he's like, okay, let's do that. And I want you to head it. And Ilcho's a young guy, I'm 29 as well. So, you know, we like to take some risks and do some things. So I'm like, okay, so let's open a company in Macedonia. Well, it didn't turn out to be quite easy for us, not having any help from anybody. We didn't really seek any help. I'm kind of the person that just kind of goes and does things on my own and tries to figure it out. So we figured out how to open a company. It took us a couple weeks, but we got there. And that's what brought us Cosmic Development, which now has 50 employees, well, near 50 employees in Skopje in less than a year and a half. And it's... So I guess within a year and a half, the reasoning, but I guess the philosophy that I wanted to bring to Macedonia was to kind of take that Canadian mentality that we have in Canada. Like in Canada, I have a ping pong table in my office. That had to happen here in Macedonia as well. We don't have a bar in our Canadian office, but I decided since, might as well throw one in there just for the look's sake or whatever. So we also have, an Xbox room, I think actually a PlayStation 3 room, where, employees can kind of relax, sit down, and play PlayStation 3. So we really brought that, kind of Google, kind of Canadian, American style, environment to Macedonia to try to attract the best talent in the country. And it's, till now, obviously, it's worked very, very well. The employees that we have there are stellar. The quality of work that they produce is above anything that I've seen. We have a client waiting list that kind of goes on forever, and I can't hire fast enough anymore. So it's turned out to be quite the great story, and I think the reason why that happened is because of the gaps that I noticed in other markets like India and Argentina, and I guess it exists other places as well for any outsourcing type of company. So when I came in here, I wanted to make sure that I filled those gaps that I had problems for myself with JMG. And by doing that, that's led us to have relative good success in the last year and a half. And I guess I want to speak about those gaps. Those gaps that I had, obviously, were, the thinking was never out of the box when you're taking a wireframe and you're sending it to another country and they're developing what you want. What I found is that if you sit with a client and you're in front of them and you're talking in the same language that he talks in and there's no communication gap, you're going to be able to cut the corners a lot better than anybody else. So by doing so, we have a few people on the ground in the United States that go and actually sit on the ground with our clients in the US and in Canada and wherever they may be, and actually sit there for whether it's a week or two. They act as our consultants, our front line that understand the client's needs and really put together, not just looking at their wireframe, but also getting all that out-of-box experience that you want to have when you do a project. And that has worked out very, very well. When they take that back to Macedonia, you have that extra filter line when you're going back to the client in America. Those consultants sit there and look at the product and make sure it's perfect. So with that being said, everything that we do has been pretty solid, and the clients keep coming back. We don't even have a sales team for Cosmic Development. We don't have one guy that goes out there and sells because, frankly, we have too many people coming to us asking for us on a recurring basis for more work to get done, and we have trouble filling that. So if you guys know anybody that's in programming or development, we would love to hire them, because I think we're looking to hire at least 20 .NET programmers, another 15 PHP programmers. We could have 100 tomorrow if it was possible in this country. So that being said, Cosmic has done quite well. The exporting of IT services from Macedonia is a wonderful market. It's the best I've ever seen, and I've been quite a few places, especially when it comes to IT. And it's now led my colleagues in Canada to say, okay, well, how do I get involved with Cosmic? How do I invest in you guys? Well, really, we're not looking for investment. Things are going so well, it kind of runs on its own. But what we are going to do is we just launched, well, we haven't launched yet, it's in its infancy stage, is startup.mk. And what we want that to be is an accelerator program for young entrepreneurs and young people in Macedonia to kind of start up their own companies. And it's not your typical fund if you're familiar with like 500 startups in the US or Extreme Labs in Canada. It's your micro startup incubator type fund where you give $15,000 to $20,000 to a company for a small percentage of their company, and you bring them into your office, you mentor them, you put together a mentor list, and you kind of teach them things that you've done and how you can help them. So we're going to be starting that probably within 6 months to a year. The fund is going to be backed by myself and some partners that I have, another partner that owns Cosmic as well. And we're looking for young entrepreneurs to try to bridge those gaps to America and the rest of the world. And hopefully we can help the Macedonian market become the next little Switzerland, if I could say that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now we'll hear another successful story connected with the IT sector, which is highly potential sector in the Republic of Macedonia. It is actually a continuation from what we have heard previously from Chris, but translated in Macedonian terms with Mr. Christian Danilovski, CEO of FX 3X, IT company specialized in visual effects. Some of you may have heard about him for making famous Macedonian sky through his work on the movie Aviator in 2004. Christian is an Emmy Award nominee for special visual effects, who worked on many renowned projects, some of them being Academy Award nominees or winners. Mr. Danilovski has recently been awarded the New European Champion for 2011, acknowledgement for achievements in the international markets and successful model of entrepreneurship. One Macedonian media wrote, if Steve Jobs was a model for successful entrepreneur in the USA, then we have Christian Danilovski here. Christian.
Thank you for your kind words, Živko. Well, let me give you a brief information introduction to FX3X. FX3X is a company that does animation and visual effects. It has been founded in 1997, so this is our 15th year. And currently we employ 106 people, hopefully 120 by the end of this year. It was quite the long road for us to be able to work on all of these famous movies. I mean, we basically started 2 people in 1997, and for the first 7 years we were working only on the local market, TV commercials, whatever, had animation or visual effects in it. And pressed by 2 things, basically our big ambition to work on some really cool projects like Hollywood movies. And the other thing was the market was simply not big enough for us. And we experimented a little bit with the region. We opened an office in Belgrade. Somehow it didn't turn out right for us. It was profitable, but we saw that the amount of drain on our resources from our base office in Skopje was significant, and we said, well, we might as well try for the big thing. I mean, if not now, when? So in 2004, we had our first Hollywood movie that we worked on. We did some shots, some work on shots on the Aviator, Martin Scorsese's film. And from there on, it started really well. We had, as Živko mentioned, an early string of successes also in TV programs. So for our work on The Path to 9/11 in 2007, I was nominated for an Emmy Award. Right after that, in 2008, a movie that we worked on also got the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. It was The Golden Compass. But we really hit it well in 2009 when we started working with one of the major Hollywood companies, Lucasfilm, and worked on Terminator. And then it was like 25 people. Now we are like 105. So it was really, in many ways, rapid growth. Basically, it just gets better so far, knock on wood. So we are expanding the company to 120 this year, and hopefully many more in the years to come. What I would like to share here is some experiences as on the opposite side from the previous panelists. We are in this way a vendor for the outsourcing. So we are working with the US side or Canadian or UK, depending on where our clients are located. So what we learned so far was that global market is really a challenging place because the world is your competition. So you have to really develop to the highest possible competitive standards in your market. Also, very important thing is that you shouldn't ever stop learning. I mean, working with big companies like the ones I previously mentioned is really, on one hand, a humbling experience. But on the other hand, it's an amazing, tremendous learning opportunity because you get the chance to learn from the best and to be the best. So thankfully, we all at FX3X pride for our big drive and energy to learn and to push for the next limits. I mean, this actually led to at a certain point, like 3 years ago, we were among the 15 companies in the world that were first to implement the new 3D stereo pipeline in our work, which was an achievement that we weren't really aware of until at some conference we discussed with our colleagues. So that's number one. I mean, number two is that, again, I would agree, you should learn your market and be always present in your market. And that doesn't mean just to know what the companies are, but what the business culture is, I mean, the details are everything that matters, because that's your competitiveness against other companies all across the world, because it is essentially key. If you miss, I mean, it's very often that we see here in Macedonia, I mean, okay, we all speak some English, and people mostly think it's good English until they're faced with some problems, because when you know your market, you have to know the terminology and what does it mean. As you know, he said, like, okay, I want it to look like this. That doesn't mean just copy it. And so it's it's the nuances that matter. And also the most important thing in our industry, and I suppose in all of international businesses, never ever promise what you cannot deliver. I mean, it's better to under-promise and over-deliver, as it is really something that actually makes you a more reliable partner and a more requested and searched for vendor in the international business. Also, on the other hand, I mean, this is Macedonia 2025 conference. So where is Macedonia in all of this? First of all, FX3X is completely based in Macedonia, so all of those employees are, you know, Macedonian citizens, and we are still yet to open offices in other countries, but at this moment it's 100% Macedonian. And our experience in this term was, well, basically in the beginnings, 2004 and the next few years, Macedonia was pretty much anonymous in our market, in you know, production and film production and TV production. Again, by hard work and lots of networking and you know, presence and being a really disciplined vendor, we actually made it so we can put the name of the country on the good side of their, you know, worldwide lists. Currently, though, because of the globalizations, it's really now irrelevant where the location of the vendor is. It used to be like some sort of guarantee for some people, but now it's really, they're just focused on the work that's delivered and on the schedule, you know, being on time. What I can say as a message to young entrepreneurs here, and but also to investors, I think that given our experience, that there has never been a better time to start a business in IT related or whatever is the business done over internet in Macedonia, because the connectivity is really, really good these days. It's world class because we're using it firsthand. We know that. Also, the competitiveness of Macedonia, the low cost of living, is something to be that really helps positioning yourself on the market. What we saw is also that there is a good choice of qualified workforce. We heard quite a lot about, well, you know, they cannot work immediately on big projects or, I mean, in IT or wherever, which essentially is true, but then again, we hear that even from our colleagues in the United States or United Kingdom or wherever. So what we did to surpass this was just build this training in-house or perfectioning of their skills in our business, so we stay competitive. And that's why I can, again, repeat, there is a good choice of qualified workforce here. The business climate, we know about it. It's really, for us, it's really good because we're, you know, over 90% export-oriented. Most of our projects come from either Hollywood or other Western productions. So it's really, those are all good sides. The bad side is that there is quite, the money is quite expensive here. It's the access to capital is a little bit more expensive. However, from what I heard on the previous panel, there are some good news there. So, yeah, basically, I would call it, and I would be maybe pretty much criticized for this. I would call this the land of opportunities for business in IT industry. So.
Thank you, Christian. According to the unofficial data from the State Statistical Office of the Republic of Macedonia, Macedonian export in 2011 was about 4.4 billion US dollars. But I personally believe there is much more potential here with us. In the action plan for the 2012 and the strategy for promotion of export prepared by the Ministry of Economy of the Republic of Macedonia, there are 4 basic sectors with high export potential, the food sector being second according to the rank of importance. If Macedonia is well known for something, then it's definitely the quality food that we have, the quality of the food. Our 4th panelist for today is Mr. Gligor Cvetanov, CEO of Mac Progress Vinica, one of the biggest food industries in Macedonia. Mr. Cvetanov, please share your experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Živko. I'm very honored and happy to be here today and to tell one more successful story of Macedonian economy. How a small family business opened just like a trading company, growing one of the biggest food industries. Company was founded by my father 22 years ago, and I joined the company 3 years after. And step by step, in coming years, we were transferring our business from the trading to production. First with processing of agricultural products, and later on in confectionery business. Today, Mac Progress is one of the biggest food industry with 350 people employed in 2 factories in very small city of Vinica, East Macedonia. We produce more than 10,000 tons products, which are exported, 75% are exported in 35 countries worldwide. Our products from Vinica going to biggest retailer in region and in Europe, like Tesco, Lidl, Carrefour, and Consum, Interspar, Mercator, and many others. They are very well positioned there. Our product portfolio is wide assortment of cakes, biscuit, cookies, under brand name Vincini and Vincini Finest, salty crackers under brand name Armonia, and agricultural products with brand name Sunny Valley. Except these main brands, in our portfolio we have more than 20 other sub-brands. I hope you already test some of them here at the breaks. As we are very big local patriots, and all our brands are connected with the city where we are living and we are working, and we are taking positive energy from it. So Vincini mean that it's coming from Vinica city, and it's working, and it's Cini. Armonia, it's old Roman from Roman period name of Vinic Cocale, that is very famous internationally through East to terracotta icons coming from very early East Christian period. And Sunny Valley is our Kočani Vinica Valley that is planned with more than 280 days, sunny days in the year. So always sun. From the first beginning, where we start with production, our goal was to change, to replace imported products on domestic market. And this we succeed very fast. And after later on to expand regionally and internationally through export of our products. To be Macedonian exporter is very big challenge and very big pleasure because our country is placed with all needed resources to produce quality and healthy food. And people are big gourmands and have clear environments and plenty of sun. We know in our company that for quality products that are nice packed and good marketed, there are no borders. Confectionery industry in Macedonia is a fast-growing industry. Capacity is more than 45,000 tons, which export every year is increasing. Competitive is strong because of the low taxes for making business and also because of the free trading agreements between European Union and CEFTA. And the main thing that we are competitive is also policy of low custom for sugar, the main raw materials for confectionery industry. At the moment we have like 35% cheaper sugar than in Europe, so this makes us very competitive. Another main issue is quality standards that we apply in production. In Macedonia we have same legislation and food standards like in European Union. In our company we operate according to ISO 9000, ISO 9001, 14001, HACCP, IFS standard. And also we are working with standards that are for consumers with religious preferences like halal and kosher. Main markets to our company and to all confectionery industry in Macedonia are traditional markets like ex-Yugoslavia, countries from ex-Yugoslavia republics and countries in the region of Central and Southeast Europe. After Arabic Spring, there are also big potential to expand to countries in North Africa and Middle East. Potential that our company start to use, exporting big quantities to Libya, Algeria, and many others. We already sent our representative to Kuwait and to Istanbul, where we have locations and where we are focusing to these markets. To export in 35 countries means that we must develop good partnership with our distributors and good strategy to invest in the marketing and the markets. Mac Progress is a modern market-oriented company, and in all 22 years of operation, we continuously invest in research and development of new products and improvement of existing one in order to meet the need of the consumers. Here I would like also to express our positive experience with Macedonian diaspora that we are working with. We have 3 companies that we are working in Australia, Sydney, and USA, New Jersey, and Toronto, Canada. We have distributors that are, from first beginning, they were focused to sell our products to ethnic shops. And it was a big pleasure of me when my friends or some colleagues went to Manhattan and in first shop they see our products. It is really a big pleasure for me. Our target, our goal is to be leading confectionery industry in the region of Central and Southeast Europe. At the moment, our team is in Paris. Tomorrow is starting biggest food event for this year, CL exhibition, where we will promote our products to all world, and we hope that we will add at least one more country in the export map. So Thank you.
Thank you. The last two participants on this panel will present to you a model of successful Macedonian-Canadian cooperation. We have with us today Boris Lajic, Director of the Commodity Trading Division of Export Packers Company Limited, one of the top 10 privately owned food companies in Canada and Financial Post 500 listed company for over 20 years. A company that besides in North America has established operations in Asia, Africa and the Pacific. Under the management of Mr. Miki Veličkovski, owner partner at the Macedonian Carnicom Limited, this company started with exports of Macedonian grown and processed fruits and vegetables to the markets of EU and North America. In the next 10 minutes, Mr. Lajic and Mr. Veličkovski will be presenting their business model of successful Macedonian-Canadian cooperation. Please.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the organizers of Macedonia 2025. I think all of us have been very impressed over the last day and a half, and I'm quite honored to be here, the only non-Macedonian on the panel, because I'm very honored. I think all of you can be impressed by all of the Macedonians that are on the panel. Very great success stories, really good news stories for the Macedonian people, sustainable businesses that will work into the future. And my personal experience, I'm with Export Packers, and we're an international commodity trading firm based in Canada. I guess what Mr. Veličkovski and I would like to present is, after 12 years of working in the Macedonian market, we've been in the Balkan market in general, delivering meat products to different markets for further processing, and we've been doing it quite successfully. I've been very impressed with working with the food safety, attention to food safety in the Macedonian market, the highly educated workforce, the highly educated people that we're working with. But I think what we're more importantly, what we're trying to bring across to you is one of our upcoming projects, and that's exporting product from Macedonia, and that would be frozen fruits and vegetables to begin with. What I'll do is I'll explain a little bit of the demand side of the equation, and then I'll pass it to Mr. Veličkovski to explain a little bit more about the supply side from the Macedonia, the successes and the challenges that, quite frankly, that we have been facing. Export Packers was established in 1937 and is a commodity trading house specializing in the export of agri-food products worldwide. We have offices in North and South America, Europe, and Asia. There are many commodity categories traded at our organization globally, but the top three in terms of volume sales are meat, which occupies the top position at 60%, juice concentrates, fruits and frozen vegetables at 33%, and field crops, that would be beans, peas, lentils, and that rounds it off at 7%. Export Packers ships approximately 13,000 ocean containers of agri-food products annually to over 90 countries. Some of the competitive advantages that we have leveraged globally also drive our success in our Macedonian business. I guess number one is experience. We have teams of industry professionals using vast networks of contacts for critical, up-to-date information gathering. Information in our business is key. We have great financing, which would be the second competitive advantage. Third would be economies of scale of services. In our business, the product is the biggest cost, but our second biggest cost would be transport. And because we are quite large, our economies of scale in terms of the buying power that we have globally allows us to keep those costs down as well. And I guess the final and most important to this project would be a very focused access to two main distribution channels abroad, those being the food manufacturing industry and the food service sector. Most recently, we've included fruits and vegetables into our portfolio, and it's quite frankly a rapidly growing segment of our business. Some of our top clients in North America of all of our commodities have some pretty strict purchasing protocols that they need to follow. most of them require plant audits, which requires their technology specialists to come over to any place globally to inspect the facilities to make sure that they live up to the standards that their food safety requirements require. But a prerequisite of having that audit is actually to be certified. In some of, I've heard it here as they need HACCP certification, kosher certification, BRC certification, and those are some of the certifications that some of the facilities here in Macedonia would have to be looking to complete. Our plan in Macedonia at this point is straightforward. In the short term, we would market the higher quality frozen fruits and vegetables grown here. Once the market and sanitary certification issues were streamlined, which will take some investment, we would be looking at investing in the region to create our own value-added products to push through our distribution channels. Now, just an aside, and a very quick aside, one of the interesting ways that this business has developed was I've been traveling here for 12 years and would have many of my executives come, and everyone would comment when we're sitting down to dinner at the flavor of the vegetables and how much more flavorful they are than North American. I think every time I come here, everyone has the same comment. It's so good. So, on a trip a few years ago, we brought our specialists up to see is the quality really that good, and they confirmed that yes, it is, and that really drove some of the desire to start this project on the exporting of this product. Our current experience with Macedonian processors of agri-products is that they really have a focus on Europe. And I think that selling to the European market without taking into consideration the potentially more lucrative opportunities in North America might not be the way to go. I think North America is definitely a market that should be looked at, and that's definitely what we're going to be trying to push. Our current channels in North America are using a majority of agri-products of Chinese origin. The reason that China is a main source right now is primarily because of pricing. I think that you can talk about a lot of commodities in the same way. However, the general downfall of Chinese product is quality. There's an inconsistency in what is ordered to what is received, and that's a big problem. If you have a processing facility of a certain specification that you need to meet a certain flavor profile, that becomes a really big problem when they receive the product. Additionally, in our experience in China has been somewhat tainted by the business practices of vendors. Agricultural commodities are notorious for being volatile in terms of pricing. And in the West, we overcome this by the integrity of a contract. A contract is a contract. If we have a contract, we stand by it no matter what. However, with some of our vendors in China, that doesn't seem to be the case. If there's a fluctuation of price, that's reason enough to cancel a contract. And that would leave companies like ours having to fill the contracts and take a loss in order to maintain our reputation. This leaves our higher quality end users in a position where they need higher quality, consistent product on which they can rely. Our proposition is the Macedonian product can fill a part of this demand in North America and at the same time grow and increase the Macedonian brand abroad that we've been talking about. At this point, I'll pass the microphone over to Mickey to talk about his successes and challenges on the local market.
I saw the note, Mike, that I have to be time controlled here. So thank you for having us, all of us here. I am here. My story is, it's not a coincidence. I lived in Canada for 14 years. I developed that contact there. I brought it here. I started the business in the basement. In the first year, I traded $5 million worth of meat in the area here, just by myself and my two little kids in the basement running around. But we saw the potential to increase that business in the Balkans here. So I moved my family from Canada in 2003, and I've been since here for the last 9 years, We grew the business to more than $40 million a year and 40 employees. But the time came now to give back something. So last year, we went capitalizing on the idea that the flavors is very good. So the president of the company said, well, we have to do something about it. So we shipped several containers of peppers to United States. The product passed FDI inspection, passed everything, and now we are pushing really strong. We so far didn't see whole great success, only challenges. But now the challenges are in motion. We are shipping again product. We started the vegetables, now we're doing a little bit of fruits. And export packers are in trouble because I'm pushing really hard for them to establish their own facility here that will control the product up to their standards. I and my team will assist them to do exactly what F3 does, what Vincini does, and what Emil does, and what these other guys doing. They need people to work. We also need people to work. We have the market, so we will take advantage of it. We have a strong commitment from a big trading partner, and I can only say here that we in Macedonia have made a lot of progress in the last 10 years. There is no question about it. The food safety, especially in the meat industry, some participants are also here. They have invested heavily, and our product that is produced now in Macedonia, in the meat industry, it's at any standards that I've seen in Canada or US or anywhere. And makes me proud to ship product to companies like that. The last but not the least is that our government, especially the Food and Veterinary Agency, it's actually doing an excellent job. People don't admire that, don't pay attention to that, but they have done a really, really good job. So I will use now this opportunity to meet Mike and other people that are members of the Macedonian 2025 to kind of lobby for us in the United States in a package that was included for some tax breaks for Macedonian product. The Macedonian best products were not included. So we are now facing a tough competition, let's say from Peru, from South America, but it's something to address. So Mike, I'm sorry I had to take this chance to address this. Thank you all for having us here.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that we had really fruitful discussion until now. Maybe I should start with one question, then we should go with the audience. If, Mike, you don't want to start, so. Okay. I would like to ask some of you about the perception of the brand Macedonia. How your partners are looking at Macedonia, and that the products or service or whatever we are selling is coming from Republic of Macedonia.
Last year we shipped a product very simple, frozen peppers, frozen. That was for after many, many years. The product was stopped by FDI because they haven't seen Macedonian origin peppers for quite some time. It was subject to testing, okay? Strict regulations, E. coli, Escherichia coli, all these necessary steps that were taken. The product passed that, okay? We were selling the product at few percentages higher price than the Chinese and some other origin at the moment, South Americans, particularly Peruvian, and instantly gave us a little bit of advantage, instantly, okay? We don't have a chance to say that, yes, the Macedonian branding, it's yet there, but the first start was really, really well accepted.
Thank you.
In our business, I think Macedonia is viewed very favorably. The Aveda Corporation, who sells very high-end products, our tea, for example, this one retails for $17. The other one is $27.50, so it's a very high-end company, and they care very much about who they align themselves with. So the Macedonian brand is really, they hold us in a very high esteem. Every time I go there, they want to come and visit Macedonia. As a matter of fact, they sent one of their Dr. Cindy Engelhofer came in to visit us, and she absolutely loved Macedonia. She fell in love with Macedonia. She was very impressed with the factory. So from my perspective, same thing with Arbon. Arbon retails for $14. Very high-end clients who have very, very, very favorable view of Macedonia brand, if you will. So, yeah.
Thank you, Vera. Oh, shit. Mike.
This is not really a question, but just a few comments. First, very proud to be Macedonian listening to this panel. Yes, foreign investment is very important, and hopefully Sammy will be one of the next people to invest here. But I would argue it's much, much, much more important to have local, strong companies, and this was simply a great example of that. I took 2 pages of notes in terms of how to run successful businesses. So, and hopefully many other people here took those same notes. And I'll summarize some of those in my closing comments later today. But I'm just thinking how to evangelize this. I mean, the other entrepreneurs, people that are here, I know I said no to media for most of the sessions, but actually I wish this one would be available to the general population in Macedonia, the government, businesses, students. And a challenge here for all of us. Chris, regarding the Chris Pavlovsky, first of all, I'm not sure why you're in the junior board. We should take out the junior out of there. But I was speaking with him yesterday, and he has to go to Toronto back for, unfortunately, for a funeral for an uncle. But he's flying back to Belgrade on Wednesday. I told him why. He says, I need to open up an office in Belgrade. He says, gee, I thought you were happy in Macedonia. Why in the world would you go to Belgrade? And his comment was, I just simply cannot get enough great employees here. I've gone from 0 to 50. I'm hiring. I'm delighted with all the help, which I'm getting great employees. But I have a long list of customers waiting for either expansion projects or new clients. So I've been just thinking, and it's, I mean, anyway, we'll try to help. We have a press conference later today. We'll be discussing some of the things which we've highlighted here. But one of those is, again, we're here for Kemet. We're going to open up 100 jobs. We worked for 5 years for that. And probably jobs should probably pay twice as much. And are we doing enough in a country with 30% unemployment, if there's job openings for great companies, either local companies or being invested from the outside? So I think this is kind of a aggressive thinking which all of us need to have, how to solve it. And last comment, Andy Peikoff spoke about on Thursday night, is there enough entrepreneurship in Macedonia? I can argue every country can need some more. But listening to this group, this is not lack of entrepreneurship. There's a great foundation here. Again, hopefully this is serve to remind us what's possible. And again, I cannot be more impressed and proud to be Macedonian, but listening to this group. Благодарам.
Other questions or comments?
Good afternoon. I'm Slaven Mihajlovski, CEO of Infinite Solutions and also Chairman of Software and IT Service Committee of our Masid ICT Chamber. First, I would like to thank you, Macedonia 2025, for the excellent organization. It's very unusual for Macedonia. And next year you can easily put here the Kran Montana Ohrid. It would be the same. Thank you very much for this organization. And I have, let's say, some suggestions for Chris Pavlovsky. First, you are welcome to become member of our ICT chamber, and we'll appreciate that. Second, regarding the resources that you mentioned, I see here the Dean of Finki, Mr. Dimitar Trajanov, and I am sure that he'll be more than happy to accept some scholarship from your company in order to provide resources for you. And last one, some recommendation for the Ministry of Labor. We really need a law that will allow internship of the students and postgraduates to come in our company to get training. Because just 1 month during the 3 or 4 years going into the university is not enough at all. And the labor law is very restrictive. The penalties are extremely high. If you take some student or graduate student to be in your company for 3 or 6 months to get some training, because you know that certification sometimes is very important. So you need to be sure that the people that are working for you will be so good as they are now. Thank you very much.
Do we have another questions?
I'm Dimitar Trayanov. I'm Dimitar Trayanov. I'm Dean of Faculty of Computer Science and Engineering, the slogan that I have mentioned. Here, we already talked with Chris about collaboration with the faculty, but I'm standing here to stress the collaboration that we have already with another Christian from FX Tricks and the way in which we have done this. And I think that is the collaboration is made on both satisfaction on both sides. We have established something like a club at the faculty, at the university, which is working on specific tasks and specific technologies that they have in their company. So after that, they have already people which can work in their company. And probably it's good, probably we know with Christian maybe a longer time, but with Chris also we have meeting when he has started the company here. And I think that making that collaboration with universities something that all companies from IT sector can do. And the good thing is that our faculty is open and is willing to support all our IT companies. Personally, I think that IT industry is one with the biggest potentials because we can easily get on the global market. We have good infrastructure, and in that direction, university and our faculty is willing to strongly support all the IT companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Let me just, my name is Rector Ninoslav Marina. So just to connect to what Dean Trayanov said, I don't know if you're aware, there is a new university here in Ohrid, University of Information Science and Technology. So we also very welcome you to collaborate with us because this is a new venture of the government, and it's mentioned to be like, it's meant to be elite research university. So we are looking forward to collaborating with any one of you very much in the near and distant future. Thank you.
Thank you. This means that competition is increasing quality. It's okay. The gentleman there.
Thank you. My name is Petar Indovsky. I'm coming from Gord Systems, Macedonian software company. As you could notice, pretty of us are present on this summit that express actually our interest in coordinating activities, and I will say this is just part of our initiatives, our efforts in the last 3 years, I will say, since we initiated a project for having a strategy for export of software and IT services. I would like to thank to GIZ, our sponsor that supported us on this way. But what I would like to mention is that we already have the strategy, and we have to do something in practice. That means we have to proceed with the realization. We talk to the stakeholders, the government, the business sector, but obviously we need a little bit more push from your side, from our diaspora in the USA, Canada, and Australia. What I would like to suggest, maybe there is not enough time, maybe during this afternoon, or if Mike is maybe in the following 2-3 days in Macedonia, Skopje, to organize a short meeting with the MASIT members. I think a lot of members will be interested to have a discussion with him. I hope also Mike remember massive meeting, it was 6-7 years ago, at his visit to Skopje. Well, we concluded that we have to do something more, to put a lot of effort. So there is some changes since then. There are some results, and we would like to have some, not officially, but something practical from the diaspora. So we need that push, as I mentioned. I believe all together, we could do much more. Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
If I will just add, if Mike is not present in Skopje in the following days, maybe we could do that in a short meeting this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Zoran.
I would like to refer to what Sami was talking about, the importance of education, specific education to the needs of the business sector. And in that respect, I would like Emil to share with us his impressions from his current studies at one of the best business schools, Wharton. How could business education be more, I would say, linked with the immediate business needs?
Well, Wharton's philosophy is actually a bit different. They're trying to address the needs that the business leaders don't know what they need yet. The dean talks most frequently about teaching students what they're going to need 20 years from now so that they become the business leaders of the world, which has been the case of creating many financial products and things like this through the Wharton alumni. But besides teaching you that, there's also a lot of practical examples. So far my experience has been, I'm in the executive MBA program, so anything that I learn can be immediately applied in my everyday life. So it's not theoretical. What I'm hearing here, for example, for a class in economics, macroeconomics, they'll learn a lot more about the theory and stuff like this, where we'll learn about how a certain move in, what does it mean when the labor report comes out? What does it mean when the country becomes more efficient, and how do you measure that? And so you look for trends. Or, we have a statistics class that doesn't involve any formulas, but I hear here that they focus on how to solve, formulas. Instead, they teach us how to interpret results. So it's more practical, more useful for a business leader. That's what they focus on. That's the difference that I'm hearing being now, again, in the educational side.
Do we have some extra questions? Andriana is already sending me a strange look. Okay, maybe I should just say a few words as a conclusion. First of all, to thank all the participants in the panel and also all the guests to this event. I think that investments and experts are all about vision. The least you can do is find a reliable path, and you need to try. If you don't try, of course, you will not do anything. Macedonia is a small market in terms of size, but I think it's abundant in potentials. We must understand that being a nation of 2 million people, it must be our advantage, not our handicap. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make a couple comments. First off, regarding Mike's comment regarding the media, they weren't able to come into the room, but we did provide them with a live feed, so they were able to at least hear some of it, which is fantastic. And also, lunch will be provided upstairs where it was yesterday, and we'll be back at 3 o'clock for the next panel. Thank you.